All right. Hey guys, hope everyone is doing well. If you guys can just let me know how the sound is, and if you guys can hear me, we can start from there. I'm gonna pull up the stream also. All right. So it looks like the sound is good. How's everyone doing today? Looks like we got Basic Trainer, Pokemon Academy, and Radizor. CJ Dewar, Gold Luck is here. Connor B. You say booyah. Channel 808. Nathan Gardner, nice to see you guys. Curtis. Mason's here. Hey Mason, hope you're doing well, man. Definitely been thinking about you and wishing good thoughts for you and your store. All right, so why don't we get into things? Winters is here. Nice to see you, Winters. So just a couple questions from Patreon this week for us all to enjoy. A couple of good ones. So one question we got this week was before we get into the chat questions, which we will do right after, is a question about how are people out there doing sort of mass buyings and buyouts in Pokemon, in the NFL, NFL cards, NBA cards, Marvel cards, which he didn't mention, but all these sort of markets that have really been going up, kind of like who is buying all these cards, and do I think personally that there are like high-end companies or very wealthy individuals or investors buying up a lot of these cards and trying to manipulate or move the market in a way that favors them. So, I mean, the obvious answer is, all these markets are far too big and broad to know exactly what is, affecting them and what is making up each market. What I will say in preparation for this question, I spent a couple hours yesterday talking to a number of sports cards collectors and some really big sports cards collectors on the Clubhouse, which is an amazing resource for me right now in terms of trying to study these other markets and get in touch with some of the bigger, big, not necessarily biggest guys, but big guys from different other hobbies and other card collecting hobbies. I know with like something like Marvel that I mentioned, I have a number of Marvel cards I bought a lot about 4 or 5 months ago, and I just recently started checking the values on those, and those have unbelievably ballooned. If I were to sell what I had bought, if I were to sell it for full price right now, I'd be making like 10 times on those, which is, again, amazing. Now, when I saw those Marvel cards, and I made a video on them, where we talked a little bit about those Marvel cards, the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I had a bunch of different kind of cards in that video. And those were some of the cards that I showed. I took one look at them and I was like, these are incredibly, my thinking and thought process behind it were these were incredibly, they seemed incredibly cheap. And, I didn't know about the supply side, and I was concerned that there's so much supply of these, and I had heard that there was a lot of supply. but for just how cool they looked and that they had like the original, comic book characters. A lot of the ones I was going after were actually the covers of comics that are going for millions of dollars, that sort of thing. And my thinking was that a lot of people from our generation seem to be getting into cards a lot right now. And so instead of maybe collecting comic books, maybe some of those vintage cards of those great things would also have some value as something different, as something you could put in a binder, and it's something that might be easier to store or smaller. So that was my sort of thought process, was maybe there'll be a resurgence there too. I think what's difficult with all of this is what is driving, and to go to the question is, what is driving all of this movement and demand? And it makes me nervous. It makes me anxious. There's so much exuberance and people buying, like people are now running to that market and to these markets after they've already gone up 10 times. And now they're buying things, and I've said this a bunch on the channel, and we'll repeat it, but they're buying things that they could have bought at 1/10 the price, and now they're like happy to do it, and they're doing large buyouts on it. And it scares me. That sort of mentality is the type of mentality that causes, as we talk a lot about on this channel, that causes bubbles or causes the market to get way off and the prices to go way off from what how people actually value the cards, and they're just spending lots of money because they think they're going to make a lot more money. And when that thinking reverses, or when that thinking stops, people are left with a bunch of cards that they paid thousands of dollars for that they don't really like. And that's the danger, because that's when you can see really strong retraces. So what I learned from these conversations that I had with all these people yesterday is like lots of people are doing buyouts in all these markets, in all sorts of markets. People are doing price manipulation, are trying to move up certain cards, or going after certain cards. I think Pokemon, in a lot of ways, a lot less of that was happening than Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and definitely in sports cards, but now we're seeing more of that activity, which is part of why we're seeing these huge modern spikes that we never saw before. Because even though there's so much supply and so much of that compared to vintage, there isn't so much on the market right now, particularly because PSA is so far behind, that these buyouts are actually quite effective on the PSA cards. And these buyouts right now, interestingly, which is separate from PSA, these buyouts are effective just on a place like TCG Player. Because 1,000 people buying one card, or one person, or let me put it this way, 1,000 people buying 50 cards, that's 50,000 cards, so that's a lot of that specific card. That might be all of that card that people want to sell at one time. So where all that leads, I don't know. It's all risk. Trying to predict what other people are going to do, and who's going to hold and who's going to sell and flip and get scared off, and what is everyone's financial situation. Can they afford to hold if there's a retrace, or are a lot of these people going to panic into it? I just don't know the answer to that. Again, I just go back to, for me personally, collect what you love, collect what you really enjoy, and find value where other people don't see it. And that's sort of what I continue to do, and everything that I have continued to move to, has gone up a lot in value. Now, a lot of that is just because there's rampant speculation everywhere, but part of it was that I knew that there probably would be. So while people were super focused on Pokemon, I was focused on these other card things that were not getting the attention. Now, I think the issue with some of these other things is they may be hit worse, or definitely will be affected by general retraces in all of the card markets, whereas I think like your vintage high-end Pokemon cards are going to be the safest ones, because these are the things that are wanted by the hardcore collectors who aren't going anywhere, who this is not a fad for. They're very interested in this. They want to hold these things for a long time, that sort of thing. Now, the last piece to talk about is big businesses getting involved. And there are these big companies, that are doing fractional shares of cards, that are, creating these, just like they did in stocks, where you can actually own a fraction of a share of a stock, which allows people who don't have the money to buy, their stocks that one stock can be worth over $300,000 if you have like a Berkshire Hathaway, people can't. Not a lot of people can afford that, but people can afford a fractional part of one share, and so they did that rather than continuing to split stocks over and over again, and that's why they would split stocks, is to make them more affordable for people. They have, we have these new instruments and abilities to do these sort of fractional shares. So they've moved that to the collectible world, that same concept, and now people can buy, like I can buy, 1/10 of 1%, whatever it is, of a PSA 10 Charizard First Edition or of a Trophy Kangaskhan, and that's being offered. So that's also really driving up the market. How long is that going to be sustainable? Is that something that's now part of the market and is always going to keep these prices higher? It may. That may not be something that may be a permanent change to some degree. And in fact, that could increase, and there could be more and more people doing that, which would definitely increase the prices on these items, because a lot of the reason that these high-end items are held back is because there just aren't that many people in their 30s, who have who would be interested in these cards, who have the knowledge of these cards, who have the capital to spend so much money at this stage of their life. Whereas giving those fractional shares can give them an option to do that. I don't personally understand it as a collector. It doesn't get me excited to own a fractional share of a card that I can only see through a screen personally, but I do understand how it could make you a little excited and would be better than just seeing someone else's card, knowing that you have some stake in that card, and if the price goes up, you do make money. I can wrap my head around how that would be exciting for people. So hopefully that's a good place to start for today. The second question, and general topic, because some people ask similar questions and I kind of put them together, is on Expedition and Skyridge. And then after that, we will jump right into the chat. So with Expedition and Skyridge, the thing to... So let me read the question quickly. I'm really curious about Expedition Skyridge, the hulls in particular. I have a lot of these graded because the prices just don't seem to reflect the scarcity of these cards. He said he's asked Scott about this. I find that and he says that there just isn't demand, and that's why these things aren't more expensive. It's not because there are more out there. I find that hard to believe. Then asked me, have I heard of these cards being sent into PSA en masse? The pops are so low that I find it hard to believe that there isn't more out there. I know the unpopular species were selling around 30 to 50 in PSA 9 at the beginning of 2020, so maybe it just wasn't worth grading them at the time. Yeah, exactly. I've looked on Pokemon Press to check out how the pops have been growing on all the hobbies, and it's very low compared to... Yeah. So, first of all, phenomenal question. I think you've answered I think you are looking in all the right places, and I think that your thinking is exactly right. I think the problem with this idea of I'm going to wait for demand, like the reason, like people who tell you that something doesn't have demand in this market, can miss the boat. People who constantly follow the demand and are late to where the demand is are not really value investing. They're actually more momentum investing. They're waiting for demand to be in something to prove that there is demand on an item, and then they're buying into that and flipping that into it. I think what you're doing is smarter and safer and more conservative in my perspective, which is to go for things that you think are... You look at it and you love it, you think it's amazing, and you don't understand how other people don't see it that way. And then I think what you do is you try and figure out, well, why is that? And often it's because something isn't that expensive, ironically. When things go up in price and when a lot of people, YouTubers, hype them up and talk about them, and Instagrammers and TikTokers, and when there's a lot of media around something, it's going to cause an inflation in that price and the demand to increase. And so the E-Series haven't really been talked about that much recently. They had kind of a moment. A lot of people were talking about Skyridge for a while. I was seeing lots of Skyridge videos. Now I'm not seeing as much. I think Modern's sort of having a moment. I think when Logan Paul comes back in, it'll be interesting to see if it switches back to Vintage and what people are talking about. But a couple of things. So with E-Series. So one, E-Series has gone up a lot. So E-Series has gone up as much as all these other sets in terms of percentage. But I think that E-Series has always been more undervalued than these other sets overall. I agree with you. In terms of giving you sort of the behind-the-scenes info on E-Series, I know of one person, and one person only, who's sending in a lot of E-Series. And I know people who are sending in a lot of all of the other Wizards of the Coast. Now, I'm just one person, and I have, I know 20 people maybe who are sending in quite a bit of stuff, and none of them are sending in a lot of E-Series except one. I have looked at lots and lots of collections. I don't see E-Series that much. Okay? And when I do see them some of the time. They're rarely in extremely mint condition, particularly the holos. I see the uncommons, commons, and interestingly reverse holos a little bit more in decent condition for whatever reason. I think that's just random with the reverse holos, because the reverse holos too should be quite difficult to grade. What other info can I give you on that? Yeah, the pop reports, so a lot of these cards are very difficult to grade. Some aren't as difficult to grade. The other key points are people didn't like these cards that much when they came out. People weren't in the hobby. A lot of people left the hobby. But that's true for Gold Stars. It's true for Level X's. It's true for so many things. So I think all of that is important to think about with these. Some of the cards are really huge evaluations. So I would say that I think, and I won't go into it here, but I think some E-Series cards are definitely undervalued within the current market in terms of relative to other things, in terms of how I think they're going to perform over time. I think other E-Series cards are probably where they should be. I don't think anything is too overrated right now. I think Crystal Charizard got too high, personally. But other than that, I don't think that anything got too high. And I think, the Crystal Charizard has retraced quite nicely, which makes me feel better about it, actually, in the long term. And I think that as long as the rest of Pokemon can stabilize around it and E-Series can continue to grow, it'll continue to grow at some point. But we may see another big retrace on it. That's just the type of market we're in right now. But all of your questions and thoughts on E-Series about why maybe it wasn't as great as much as is exactly true. When I've talked to people who own a lot of this, the first thing they say is, I never graded it because there just wasn't value there, or they didn't really like grading cards. I guess the last thing to mention, though, is that the people who actually own these things love Pokemon and love these cards, and they, even if they're starting to grade them, they may not want to sell them. And a lot of people involved in E-Series are not buying it to flip it, which is very good for the market sustaining value, all that sort of stuff. All right. So I just saw a question here from Squeaks at the bottom, which I'm going to grab, and then we're going to go back up to the top, just 'cause I think it's a really good one. Hey, Squeaks, by the way, thanks for joining us today. Squeak says, where do you draw the line between bringing exposure to something and hyper beasting something? Thanks for the chat. Yeah, I think that's definitely the question that I think about a lot, and I'm sure as a content creator you think about a lot. The primary thing I'll say, and I said this in my in the what is hype video I made a few weeks ago, is someone giving you fundamentals and reasons why something is going to outperform something else, or why something is undervalued, or why are people going to like this item, so what's going to affect the demand, and then why is there not going to be enough to go around, what's going to affect the supply. If people are talking about those concepts, they certainly aren't purely hyping an item up. I think that the pure hype is when people are saying things like, everyone should go buy this, and not giving reasons. But even when you talk good fundamentals, just the fact that you're putting more spotlight and exposure onto something, people may not be listening to your ideas or concepts, Squeaks. Like, they may see me talk about something, and just because they think I know what I'm talking about, or because I have a number of people listening to me, and I have a big collection that I know what I'm talking about, and so they may not actually listen to what I'm saying, that causes hype. So, bigger YouTube channels are going to experience that a lot more. And so, as an influencer or social media person, I think it's our responsibility to talk about is to be sort of a conservative, calming voice on these sorts of things. That's the way I view it, and to give both sides and both perspectives, and encourage people to think critically and make these decisions for themselves. But of course, after we talk about it, it can easily be hyped. Someone can then say, oh, Jake talked about this card, let's buy a lot. And then someone else hears that and then they start buying. And all of that is sort of hype off the fact that Jake talked about a card, which isn't, has nothing to do with the fundamentals of the card itself, if that makes sense. So generally where I draw the line is, are there reasons why this card should be more valuable, or is it just people trying to push a card up because they own it? Something like that, or... all right. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top here with Basic Trainer's question. With first edition base boxes being only for the top 1% of collectors, how much more of a ceiling does base Unlimited have now? When do you see Unlimited base reach 100K? Love the content. So, okay. There's a lot of interesting things to say here. So, first of all, who knows what that base set first edition booster box would sell now publicly? Because of this whole Logan Paul thing and Logan Paul's box being worth like, $1.2 million because of the way he was selling his packs and the evaluation he's been able to get by splitting up the packs. It'll be interesting to see how that affects base set booster box first edition prices if one ever sells again. I'm not sure when one will sell again. I think that we're getting to the point where Logan probably bought out and tried to buy out as many of the people who were really wanting to sell or willing to sell right now, at least in the short term. But there's so much added premium, obviously, to that booster box because of the shout out you get from Logan and being part of history or being part of that experience. So it's really that's not what it's going to be like for the average collector who wants to buy one of those boxes, interested in one of those boxes. So, but let's say that let's just say that the first edition base set booster box is worth like 500K right now. Let's just say we'll start with that. We don't know how many of those are left. I'm aware of maybe like 15 of them now. A couple of the people I knew had them sold, have now sold them. I know Gary has like a case of them. I think I've heard of maybe one other person having a case or having a few of them. I'm sure there are a lot of quiet collectors and big people who have a case here and there and who just don't want to sell or don't need money or that sort of thing. But I think that there are very few of those left. In terms of unlimited booster boxes, we have no idea how many are. Or I have no idea how many there are. I see people posting pictures of 10 of them. I have friends who have 5 to 10 of them. I think there are way, way, way more of those. I think there were way, way more of those originally printed. I think people are... a lot of people bought them during this last year and are holding them and are not opening them and hoping for them to continue to go up and then selling them again. I think that not a lot of people are breaking these boxes open to sell the packs compared to how many there are still. Although people are certainly doing that and influencers are certainly still doing that, I see that trend slowing down a little bit. We'll see if Logan Paul amps that up again. Again, it's all a supply and numbers game here. So, I mean, my thinking, when I see people like, Mizkif and Ludwig and Moist Critical and these big streamers, and then we talk about our own Pokemon, people opening up a box of this occasionally, Randolph opening boxes, how much more are they going to do that? If they really continue to eat the supply like crazy, I could see the booster boxes becoming more and more unhinged from the expected value inside and from the cards inside if people are still willing to purchase for higher and higher amounts. But there's going to be a point where I think people are going to stop purchasing the booster box because it's going to be so much more than the expected value. And even though they get to have Randolph, their favorite Pokemon person, open it, it's just not going to be worth the level that they're going to lose, even if they get that shout out. And, Logan Paul is sort of in a realm of his own in terms of how much his shout out is worth and how much attention you can get from that. Whereas like the other PokeTubers and the other people, you're not nearly going to get that much viewership, that much focus on you. So you're not going to be able to get as much money back by making 3 or 4 videos on the experience and by just having more people be aware of your channel. So there's going to be a point where those booster boxes probably stop getting opened up if they keep going up in prices as the supply dwindles. I think that unlimited cards are not in there's so many base set unlimited cards, and this is also, I think, the big issue with Evolutions. There's so many base set unlimited cards yet to be graded. Every day I'm having people reach out to me with binders from when they were a kid, with Charizards, with like multiple Charizards in it, in like PSA 7, 6, 7, and 8 condition. Okay? So there are so many more of those out there, and people are really just rediscovering their childhood binders. Most people who never thought about Pokemon, and they're all asking about grading and are all interested in grading. Plus, we have a year's worth, PSA is almost a year behind right now in some of their bulk grading, where there's going to be lots and lots of base set unlimited in there. So base set unlimited, I would imagine, will get hit pretty hard and is going to lose quite a bit of value again. I think Logan Paul might positively affect it in the short run, but I think in the long run, base set unlimited will get hit really hard, and then we're going to hit a point where, is there just too much base set unlimited for, in PSA 7, PSA 8, PSA 9, for the amount of Pokemon fans and the amount of people that want those cards? Or do people stay interested enough in Pokemon that those cards do retain value? And if eventually those cards are going to dry up, if the demand keeps getting bigger and bigger, if people keep coming in the hobby who have more and more wealth and more generations come in and they want those original cards, I'm bullish. I think that will happen. I believe in Pokemon and the Pokemon market, but there's certainly risk there. But that may take a while. So what I would expect, if I really had to guess, and you guys know I don't like particularly guessing, but if I just were to happen to guess, and this is such speculation, I would not invest off of this type of speculation, but that when Logan Paul comes back in, because PSA I don't think is nearly even close to caught up, right? We're talking 8-9 months behind. I wouldn't be surprised if this year, and certainly after Logan Paul, we see some strengthening in Unlimited, and we've already been seeing that in preparation for Logan Paul to do his thing, because, as I say on this channel, investing people think about the future, and they already put the future in their prices. Yeah, so I think we will see, probably it go up and do pretty well. But I think as the supply continues to hit the market over time, you're going to see eventually a weakening in that and a decrease in prices. And if it floods the market, you're going to see a rapid decrease in unlimited base set holos and certainly the unlimited cards, certainly the common and uncommons. And then hopefully eventually you'll see it sort of bottom out and then start sort of a slower, more stable upwards trajectory. And we're going to have bubbles in the future, and we're going to have periods where people get hyped up around it and it inflates again, just like we see in sports and comics and all this sort of stuff. But that's what I would be thinking. So when you think about when to buy, when to sell, if you want to buy these things and you want to hold them for a long time, I think you could do well. But if you want to buy these things, and sell them in a year, you might not do well. If you want to buy these things and sell them in a few months, you might do well. So it's really tons of speculation. Going back to your question to put a bow on it, the booster box is a much better investment for something like Unlimited Base, because there's going to be infinite amounts of Unlimited Base set cards, like so many from all different grades, but there are not going to be that many of that booster box. And so that booster box is going to hold a huge premium. As I said before, though, the booster box won't be continuing to be open up once that expected value gets too far away from the booster box. Okay? So that's what I would be watching. We're all going to watch together, and I'll continue to communicate that as we go. Hope that makes sense for everyone. All right. CJ Durick says, "Hey, what's up, Jake? As always, looking forward to today's chat. Thanks for joining always, CJ. I really appreciate it. It's always great to see familiar names. Didn't get a chance to see the Hidden Fates 10 battle last night. Any good pulls? I believe I came in second in that 10-person Hidden Fates battle. It's the first time I've ever done one of those. It was super fun and exciting. I was hoping someone was going to pull the Charizard, which would have been really fun. But yeah, it was really enjoyable. I also just wanted to help support Sagar because I feel like I watch that stream so much and I never buy anything, and so I wanted to purchase something last night and just kind of get involved and be engaged and show some support. It was fun. I think I pulled, out of my box, I pulled a Ninetales full art, shiny full art, and a Alolan Vulpix baby shiny, and then like the Wigglytuff GX. So it was a pretty solid box, but I got beat by the Charmander, the shiny Charmander. Connor B says, "What's up, Jake? Any thoughts on the recent spikes in Harry Potter base set booster boxes? Also, same question for Tag Team GX. Finally, do you have any thoughts on the Dream League set?" So I have not actually been watching Harry Potter. I've really been turning my attention to sports cards recently. And to Marvel, because I've just been realizing how much Marvel cards have been growing. And if Squeaks is here, I need to get a lesson from you, Squeaks, on Naruto at some point, because I don't know the show very well, so I feel like I'm at such a disadvantage there. But I think that's interesting too, and DBZ is continuing to go up, all that stuff. Cards in general are having a pretty extreme moment. So I'm gonna just look up the prices of the base set box just so I can have a sense of where we're at now. Gonna check sold listings here. Oh, wow. I'm seeing $2,000 sales. Is that true? Oh, Yusei Booyah says 2,000 and Chamber 3,000. So, yeah, so that's a lot. So I think I bought like 5 base set booster boxes at like $200 each. So that's a 10x. No, actually, I bought them at $150 each. I think I got one for $120, one for $150. I think I bought 3 at once, each for $150. I got one at $120, and then I got one at $200. So, yeah, they've gone up a lot. Those have actually ballooned in value. The base set has ballooned in value more than the Chamber of Secrets booster box, because at the same time, the Chamber of Secret booster box is going for about $750, $800. So it's a little bit more than a, triple, 3 to 4 times the value, whereas at $2,000, that's an over 10 times value on some of the booster boxes I was buying. So it's interesting. The base set, for those who are interested in Harry Potter, there's a lot more of the base set booster box than there is the Chamber of Secrets. So that's why the Chamber of Secrets was always more valuable. Why I did buy quite a few of the base set boxes is because it was the first set, and I loved Hogwarts on the box. And I think that a lot of people were going to buy that box for a piece that they could put on their shelf. As I said on this channel, I tried not to push people to invest in those things, but I said, as Pokemon, I thought, when I was talking about that really during the height of Logan Paul, I was saying, well, these booster boxes are going for an insane amount of money. Harry Potter's so popular. These are gorgeous Wizards of the Coast product that look exactly the same, that have the same dimensions as Pokemon booster boxes, and yet they're going for like $35 to $800 for the most scarce one. It just seems like such good value there for me as a collector. I assume other people are going to see this too, and I was pretty aware of the supply, and Hillside was the place that had most of those booster boxes left, and I was buying them out, and I knew some other people who were, I would be very careful about that market, because I know that there are people who have very large positions and who have been doing buyouts to push the prices up. Rather than saying things are in a bubble or not in a bubble, it's all about the phase of the bubble on this channel, right? Clearly there's lots of bubble activity in all these markets. There's lots of mania activity in all these markets. We're getting lots of buyouts pushing up prices, lots of people buying things to make money, not to own the product themselves. And that always is going to cause artificial inflation that may not be sustainable over time. That being said, I think that those items, when I was buying them and other people were initially buying them, were extremely undervalued, in my opinion, for what they brought to me as a collector. And that's how I try to invest. It was the same with all the Marvel cards I bought, etc. We'll have to see with Harry Potter. I think if they can, two things. I think that if they can start one, I think people way overvalue Pokemon from the Pokemon world in terms of the idea that like only Pokemon cards can be valuable. First of all, Pokemon cards were not valuable a couple of years ago. They were worth basically nothing. And, 4, 5, 6 years ago, except for the top cards. And so the idea that just because people don't like something or something isn't valuable right now, it won't be in 3 to 4 to 5 years if it has a great IP and is a great product, is someone who doesn't, I think, actually see these markets for what they are and see how markets are actually built. So it's why I was very bullish on Dragon Ball Z. It's why I think Squeaks was bullish on Naruto and these other sorts of things, because these are huge franchises with tons of popularity, and we understand them well as enjoyers of those franchises, and so we're able to know if those cards are good and if they're going to be appealing to a lot of people, and then we do our research on how rare these items are, that sort of thing. But be careful with these things. Very risky, huge ups and downs on that sort of stuff. But the two things I will say is if Harry Potter does a modern card game, which and maybe they're still doing those movies and they continue to do those movies and they start a card game with it. Harry Potter's a huge diehard franchise. There's a lot of crossover in Harry Potter into Pokemon, into sports for younger people, into Dragon Ball Z, Naruto. There's a lot of crossover there. If that game gets more popular, it will bring more attention to those vintage cards. The fact that they're Wizards of the Coast, I think, adds something to them. And the fact that the boxes have such cool art is great. I know that there are people, like I have some friends who are starting to grade them. Again, I know some people who have huge positions, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, they probably have made $1 million potentially on this if as they sell $500,000 to $1 million. So there are people becoming, making $500,000, becoming millionaires or near millionaires potentially off of Harry Potter right now. Like that's the type of market that we're in. So lots of opportunity, but be very careful. Lots and lots of risk. Don't leverage yourself on credit. Diversify yourself. And again, at the end of the day, like collectibles are very illiquid items, particularly in bearish periods, and they don't pay you dividends like a stock will, or like buying, being, and not financial advisor here, but buying real estate and then renting it to people and getting some monthly income from that. Those are things that are much safer because you actually get money and you get return from that, which you can live on, and then you can reinvest that into other things. So be careful. All right. Mason asks, Jake, has Pokemon collecting become a premium hobby? Are WotC cards in particular now elite and out of reach for most people? Will we ever see it be more accessible? So, WotC cards in lower grades and in middle grades, and particularly unlimited and Japanese, are still extremely affordable. I think people are... there's a bit of a grading mania where people prefer almost like modern cards in PSA 10 than they prefer like played vintage cards, because they like they actually prefer the vintage card in a lot of cases, but they like the PSA 10 over the PSA 6. And I think they're making a big mistake there, because there are actually probably more or similar number of PSA 10 of that modern card in the world than there are PSA 6 of that vintage card in the world. So if you actually like the vintage card better, you're getting much better value for the PSA 6 vintage card than the modern card as a collector. I think that there's a bit of a like thing in Pokemon that 10s are the only thing that's great and 9s are the only thing that's great. And that's only true if there are tons and tons of 10s and 9s to go around. If there aren't tons and tons of 10s and 9s to go around, you're going to see 8s, 7s, 6s, 5s become very valuable. We see that in base set first edition already. As far as set cards, we see it a little bit in Gold Stars and Shining cards and in some of your Prime, Neo cards, and things like the crystals. We certainly see it in trophy cards, and it becomes more extreme in trophy cards. And if everyone can take a second, if they're liking the content so far and enjoying it, if they could take a second to like the video to help with the algorithm to get more people into the room. And if you enjoy the content here, if you can take a minute to subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Instagram at Pokenomics with an underscore at the end. And I'm starting to do groups on Clubhouse. So if you're on Clubhouse, you can actually talk to me directly on Clubhouse and hang out. Bringing a lot of other Pokemon experts on there. We're going to do roundtables. We're going to do lots of discussions. Eventually, they're going to open Clubhouse to everyone, so I'm going to see, I'm sure, a lot of you guys there. But if you have an iPhone, can get an invite, please come on and hang out with us. Super fun. And I'm much better at Clubhouse than I am at this because it's like we get to do one question at a time and we can have a back and forth, and it's all audio, which I think is primarily what I want my content to be anyway. We'll leave the gorgeous visuals to Pat Flynn if he's here. Pat Flynn's amazing job that he did on that fantastic live stream yesterday, I believe. I wasn't able to watch it live, unfortunately. Had to spend some Valentine's weekend time away from Pokemon because I was going to do this chat today. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way, for everyone out there. But yeah, I was able to watch it back today, and like all the work and effort he's putting into making those cards look beautiful, phenomenal. I've kind of gotten bored with streams with those types of things and watching giveaways and packs, but he's doing it in such a fresh way with like great music. It's kind of like being at a concert. And yeah, I encourage everyone who has, and probably most people here have, but to check out his channel and be involved in that. I also want to give a shout out to Squeaks, who's been killing it over on his channel right now with amazing information. We had a conversation a little while back. Such a smart guy. I really, he has such great knowledge, and I love listening to his videos and getting his take on things like Modern and what's happening there in particular, because he's a seller and a little bit more active in that market. So it's really good stuff. All right, back to the questions. So, yeah, so Mason, so, it's my advice to people is, collect what you love and stop worrying so much about the high grades on some of these cards would be my first advice. Get light play. Light play cards look amazing in a binder. They're fantastic. I'm doing that right now in Dragon Ball Z and some other things, and I'm having so much fun just building out binders of my favorite cards. In terms of investing, yes, I think that as an investment vehicle, those cards are risky because there probably are so many of them in Unlimited and Japanese. But as a collector, it's like, who cares if those cards don't go up in value that much? Who cares? Wait for a good deal. Try to get them at a pretty good price and just like love them. Enjoy them. Look at them every day. Be involved and engaged in the vintage part of the hobby. You don't have to run away from it just because you can't get the PSA 10s. As far as Modern, it's fantastic that people can get PSA 10s of Modern and that they love it. I love Modern Pokemon. If you go on my Instagram, I just posted a picture of some of my favorite Modern slabs. I have a huge Modern slab part of my collection. I also have 3 binders that are dedicated to just my favorite Modern cards. So I'm a humongous fan of Modern. There's so many affordable ways to still enjoy this hobby. The last thing I want to say about that, and I've been saying this to more and more people, is this fear of missing out and this overspending on new product and everyone jumping over each other to try and to get the newest product and feel like they have to open it right away, and people getting really upset about that. Pokemon is going to catch up eventually and it's going to start printing more. Obviously they sent out that letter to all of us, which, I think everyone already thinks that they were trying their best to to print as much as they could. I don't believe that they weren't already printing at maximum capacity, but it was nice that they acknowledged it publicly and it tried to reassure us that they're going to be printing more, and that people who want to collect are going to be able to do it at hopefully a more affordable price within the next year or two. Again, just be patient. This is a long hobby. Try not to overspend. Try to budget so that you have money for the next set, or that when sets start to get cheaper, or cards start to get cheaper, or things retrace in price, you have the money to buy the things you want then. You didn't spend so much or over leverage yourself on these sort of higher prices, that sort of thing. William says Unlimited WotC is still affordable. Yeah. Curtis Lee says, would you consider Rayquaza EX from EX Dragon to be the first appearance of Rayquaza, even though it's a Rayquaza EX? Online it says the first appearance of Rayquaza in English is from EX Dragon. Yes. So for me, the first appearance card, I think that first appearance cards are going to be very valuable someday in the hobby, and there's going to be more people are going to be talking about first appearance. I think right now people don't even have the knowledge of no one uses that vernacular, no one talks that way. What was the first appearance? What wasn't the first appearance? But if you can think 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line when there are so many of each Pokemon, whatever card was first of that Pokemon, I think is going to have a greater value, and we're going to develop a vocabulary in the collectible space to identify that and appreciate that, which will help bring out that value. So for me, it's going to be two things. You're going to want the first chase card, so the first very difficult to pull card of any Pokemon, and then potentially the very first appearance of that Pokemon, even if the appearance is not as highly, isn't that difficult to pull, isn't a holo, that sort of thing. I do think that it'll be interesting to see how that works over time. I imagine the first chase card ever of the popular Pokemon will be the one that becomes the most valuable and is felt as sort of the first, but that first appearance non-holo may at least have a premium over the other non-holos from that set, that sort of thing. Hey guys, hey Joe, Ken, good to see you all. Blue Goose Collectibles, Pocket Monster Dom, Pokemon Classic, highly blessed. Nice to see all of you guys, per usual. Charlie Dix, nice to see ya. Charlie Dix says, I recently picked up a couple of Magi Silver and Gold Lugia cards. They look incredible. Thanks for the recent video. You're quite welcome. Be interested to hear your guys' perspectives on those videos. I feel very mixed about making videos where I go over specific cards. To go back to Squeak's initial question, I think it's, should Squeaks and should other people, who want to help you guys think about the market critically and, figure out what's the best way to spend your money to meet your goals, that sort of thing. What's the best way to do that without artificially hyping or moving cards up too much? As you guys can tell, as soon as I made that Lenticular Deoxys video, that card skyrocketed. Now, that may be mostly because of TBJ and his video on it, although I know he didn't really go over it too much or specifically what it was, because a lot of people who watch both of our channels said they didn't know that it actually had 3 different arts. They didn't know that it was that cool, basically. But because Jake went through a lot of different cards in that video, to be fair. But the Magi cards, for example, those have been being bought up and going up in price a little bit, not as much. So, I don't know. It's the type of thing where I know that I'm giving you guys what I think is I talk to the people in Japan who sell these cards, who have graded most of the pop reports. I feel like I'm someone who can speak to these things in a way that hopefully will be pretty accurate and helpful. But with all of these Japanese cards, there's a risk that there's a warehouse somewhere, of this product, in my opinion. I just think that there's always going to be a bunch of risk that, prices right now, for example, maybe a Japanese, let's just think of a hypothetical here, maybe 8 months ago, some of the prices on those Japanese cards started to move. So a Japanese seller who has a ton of this, right, sent, let's say, 10,000 cards. Let's just say something crazy. Even 5,000 of these cards across Topsoon, Cardass, Magi, what have you. And they put it all in bulk, right? Because it wasn't worth that much back then. And let's say it's all sitting in bulk at PSA right now, and it's all going to come back and hit the market all at once, and it's going to completely destroy, at least temporarily, that market because maybe they put a lot of it on in the market, or they put it in PWCC auctions every month. That, like, we're so early in Pokemon that things like that are highly possible. Now, you would hope and you'd think that Japanese seller, if they did that, they'd be very patient. And so even if the pop reports exploded, they would only put one on the market every couple months. They would try to slowly sell, but you just never know. So be very careful. I would say buy those things if you really like them. I think those things are potentially undervalued. They're certainly underknown, underappreciated, and underhyped, in my opinion. So that's what I would say about those things. You also have to be careful because those videos are really about the high-graded ones. The lower-graded, there are quite a bit of those. Like, people in Japan you can still get those Deoxys lenticular cards. You can still get those Magi cards in fairly beat up condition and damaged condition for not that expensive. So just be careful. Brandon Duval says, "Did you watch Pat Flynn's live stream yesterday?" I did not, but I watched it back after, and or part of it after, and it was awesome. Ooh, Base Blue Boy asked a great question here, interesting one that I have not been asked before on any of these live streams. How do you know when to open a sealed product to grade the cards inside? I have some vintage Japanese products where the exterior is in bad shape, but the cards inside should be mint. Yeah, honestly, not an expert in that. I think the things you have to watch out for are things like water damage, that you could potentially see and notice definitely on the booster box, but also on the packs. But yeah, not my area of expertise. I'm not sure, people who, and maybe someone's in the chat today who can answer that at the bottom for you or give some perspective on their experience. I tend to stay away. Like, I'm opening packs from other hobbies right now, and I tend to stay away from, like, packs that look very beat up and bent because I'm worried that the cards are going to have, like surface damage, someone pressing into the card or scratches or different sorts of things. So definitely something I think about and I'm concerned with, but not something I tend to just avoid when it's beat up myself, but that might be overly cautious. Daniel Rees says, will no Symbol Jungle cards have the same impact as Shadowless cards? It would be shocking to me if they do. They certainly don't to me, Daniel. To me, the Shadowless cards are striking, and I have an extra connection to them, I think, because I really wanted them and I knew about them as a kid. The no symbol card, for some reason, doesn't have that effect on me, but it might be somewhat, like, around, purely subjective. I think it's an interesting conversation. The no symbol jungle cards for some collectors, like Gem Mint Pokemon, for example, is obsessed with them and loves them. And when we talk, it's like, do you have any of those? Because I'll buy them all, that type of thing. And was happy that I don't go after them because then he doesn't have another person like competing for them, because he's just such a lover of them. When I see those cards, I kind of just pass on them because for me, I actually don't like them as much. I actually prefer the symbol cards because I like the jungle symbol. Whereas the Shadowless cards I way prefer over the Unlimited because of the color scheme and the way it looks. I just really prefer the first edition colors and not having that shadow there. And that could totally just be because I associate value kind of instinctually or intuitively in that. But that's never going to sort of change, from how I view these things, I think. But it's a great question, and it's definitely highly subjective. And I know a number of huge collectors who absolutely love the no symbol jungle cards. So there's a great market for those, just because it's just not my preference as a collector and not my market, if that makes sense. But definitely a great market for them. Lupus says CGC grading is better and tougher than PSA. CGC 9 could be a PSA 10, but PSA cards are worth more. And what do I think about that? So Yeah, so I haven't graded that much. Sorry, I haven't graded at all with CGC. Oops. I have seen a couple CGC cards that I didn't, that I bought sort of just to look at, but I didn't actually grade. I've never graded with CGC myself. It would surprise me if like the 9s were PSA 10s. Wouldn't surprise me if a number of like the 9.5s were PSA 10s. Just kind of like Beckett, My feeling so far from looking at them is it's similar to Beckett, maybe a little bit harder, particularly with the 9s. I think Beckett 9s are usually pretty soft. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how all these places grade. Definitely like 9.5s and 10s CGC cards are like really good looking cards. There are certainly some PSA 10s that are going to be. We're not going to. This is always going to be an issue where they're going to have one standard on this card and then another standard on that card purely because of human error, human subjectivity, whatever you want to call it. And I still find enough value in it to do it. Do I think that it should go to AI at some point? I do. I think at least like. And maybe there's a human category of just like aesthetic appeal, or there's some sort of human category that they decide to add in there that they don't feel like the AI is going to capture. But clearly, when they're looking at centering and measuring different sorts of scratches and whitening, it's possible that definitely with centering, I think AI, and of course I think that really what they're struggling with and working on, and I talked to Charlie. Charlie mentioned this to me, and Rafi, a long time ago, was just that he doesn't feel like they can do that. Those other, it's like, well, one scratch may be bigger and deeper than another scratch, but it doesn't look as bad, and so the AI is going to measure it as worse. But really, the eye appeal is actually better on that card, and so it would get a higher grade if a human grades it versus a worse grade if a computer grades it. So it's like those weird sort of scenarios. I'm not sure where I fall in all of that, honestly. I think it's interesting, though. Young Ninja says, what are your thoughts on the sealed video game market? So that's one market that I do not follow. I feel I should follow that one also. I will add it to the list, Young Ninja, of markets that I am trying to at least follow a little bit. I've added some some sort of like older antique markets that I've been trying to watch because I think it's interesting to get out of that pulp culture collectible sphere. I think part of it is I just never got engaged in that market at all. I am definitely a big video game player, but for some reason it's just not a huge draw at this point, and I think a lot of it's just I'm so focused on cards that I'd rather just own cards from different collectible categories than transition to own like just Pokemon and have just like cards, video games, like everything from Pokemon, that sort of thing. But huge market, huge growing, booming market, just like so many pop culture collectible things right now. Jaden Lee says, when does a set go out of print? No answer to that, Jaden, because right now we're in this unprecedented time, in my opinion, where we just don't know, how much stuff is going to be reprinted, how often it's going to be reprinted. They could go back and reprint things from a long time ago. They can also obviously take the arts from a long time ago and reprint a different set around those arts. Does that mean that it's really out of print? We're just going to have to wait and see. Illuminati says, most kids in 10 years won't have the same nostalgia because they can't get products, even McDonald's. So this gets to an important point that I think about, which is that if the kids can't get the supply because the adults are all buying it, or it's too expensive for kids to afford, particularly if they can't buy it themselves with their own pocket money, are they going to leave the hobby? And are they not going to want these things? And what I will say is, that's only true if they can't get any Pokemon cards. But if you think about when we were kids, we couldn't get or many of us couldn't get the first edition cards, couldn't get a Charizard, but we could get the commons and uncommons. And what that led to is this feeling of like hype and chase around getting that Charizard, which added excitement. And then as adults, so many of us came back in and bought that Charizard because we didn't own it as a kid, or bought that first edition or Shadowless card because we heard about it but could never own it. So as long as they get connected to Pokemon in some way and are aware of these cards that are going for high prices, it actually could benefit the hobby in a way that's maybe a bit icky and gross, to be honest, but from a financial perspective one day, because kids are going to remember these items that they couldn't get as kids or that were so exciting as kids and then want it as an adult, that sort of thing. Now, from an ethical standpoint, I don't like any of that. That's just purely thinking on the financial side. From an ethical standpoint, it's just gross to me and annoying that like kids can't just like have fun and enjoy the hobby, and viewing the kids as consumers in 10 to 15 years is true and important when you're thinking of investing in business strategy. But from just like a human like strategy, a life ethical moral strategy, it's sort of like probably like that's an easy trade for me. I would much rather the kids be having fun and enjoying the product and being able to get anything they wanted than it creating hype around some of these items that maybe I'm going to make more money on somewhere in the future, if that makes sense. William N says, I see ungraded E-Series cards all the time, but most are in poor condition. Yeah. So I'm going to grab a couple more questions from the top, and then I'm going to head to the bottom because I know as usual, we're way, way, way behind. OmniPoke says, hey, Jake, thoughts on the 11K Expedition Skarmory sale, PSA 10 pop of 6. I missed that one. Joe, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I'll check to see if that was on eBay. I've actually been spending this week studying the sports market, or trying to get a handle on the sports market has been my main focus. So let me just look it up here quickly, guys. I don't see it, but I certainly believe you, Joe, that was a real sale. Maybe it was a private sale. You can tell me at the bottom, and I can see it after. That and offhand, the Doug Trio, definitely the hardest cards to come by. I have them both in 9, but not in 10 from that Expedition set because they're so hard to find. Definitely makes sense to me. I mean, when we look at like the Neo cards, the Neo super low pops had, went for huge values. I think that definitely makes sense when we compare it to those Neos. I think that people are overvaluing super low pop cards in general. Actually, you know what? I don't think they're overvaluing the super low pops. I think they're undervaluing the medium low pop cards from those sets that are still insanely low pop. Is actually the way I want to put that, and what I mean by that is there's something going on right now in Pokemon where people, I think because there seems to be so much vintage on the market constantly on eBay, and there seems to be like almost the same amount of vintage in some way than modern because you can still kind of buy everything. All these vintage cards can feel like they're more accessible or gettable than they actually are, or actually might be in a year, when most of this modern product is still going to be flowing through eBay. Maybe at a much higher price, but still going to be constantly flowing through eBay. So scarcity, so a card not coming up for 2-3 years is what is going to exponentially increase prices on a card like that, because you're going to get 2, 3, 4 people who desperately want that card who have been looking for years, and if they don't buy it then, they're going to feel like I'm never going to get it. That's the type of stuff that's going to cause huge spikes on cards. I think that if Pokemon does well, we're going to see that for cards that have pop 80, pop 90, the pop 20s, and tons of pop 20 cards in Neo, tons of pop 30, pop 40, pop 60, tons of pop 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 in the E-Series. So if we get to a point in Pokemon where instead of those cards being like 2 of them, buy it now always, where we get to a point where people actually, more wealthy people come into the hobby, and people currently in the hobby get wealthier and are starting to hold those and not put them on the market to sell them. If we get to that point, what you're going to see is those cards potentially exponentially going up in value when they come onto the market. As I said, even if they came onto the market once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months, that would be much they'd be going for much more than the fact that they're always sitting on eBay, even sitting on eBay for high prices, because it gives that psychological feeling of that I can still always get this card, so I don't have to jump on it right now. Thrifty TCG says, I think you, Jake, and Randolph are giving the best disclaimers on caution and patience in the hobby at Squeaks. I saw Randolph's recent video, was very impressed. I just recently saw it on him just being like, I'm not doing box breaks anymore because I feel uncomfortable basically making a lot of money off the fact that I have a brand and that people will pay for the attention, for the shout out, and for that connection with me. I think he deserves a huge amount of credit and respect for saying that. I think that it's not an easy thing to do in his sort of position. And, I've always really respected Randolph. I don't know him personally, so when I don't know someone personally and I'm just getting to meet someone, I'm a bit of a cautious, skeptical person of people, in the sense that someone can seem really nice and really great, and then they can, over time you see that they kind of do kind of crappy things. I'm a big believer in don't judge people quickly. See how they speak and act over a long period of time. Everyone does kind of crappy things from day to day. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone says something that they shouldn't. Everyone offends someone. But watching Randolph a little bit, knowing Graded Gem a little bit, who he works with, knowing James, who works with Graded Gem, and getting a little bit into that world, and just watching their podcast and seeing him interact with people, and then interacting with some of his fans, who I've been interacting with like on Clubhouse and other places. He's really positively affecting people, and people really respond to him in a really positive way. Very similar to Pat, and that I celebrate. Like it honestly warms my heart when someone comes to me and says, I love Randolph. Randolph makes me want to like be involved in the Pokemon hobby, and he inspired me to start a channel. Like that's what warms my heart, And so, yeah, big, I think that trying to run a big YouTube channel and a Pokemon business and do it in an ethical way that doesn't like lean on your subscribers or cost them too much money or put them in a bad financial situation during a hyped up bubble is a near impossible thing to do. And I think he's doing a really good job of trying to manage that. All right, so I'm going to head to the bottom of the chat and see what people are talking about. Hey, Pat, good to see you here. Pocket Monster Dom. Patricia Ness and Swami, great to see you, Swami. Guys, give Swami some more love. You guys need to watch. He does these like comedy, bubble videos that he puts a lot of work into and are hilarious over at his channel. I love those videos, Swami. Keep up the great work on those. Fantastic. And Swami is someone who cares about people and cares about the community and is making videos and engaging in chats and being here because he's passionate about it and about helping people. All right. James Brighter says, what are your thoughts on the booster box breakers having their names on the PSA slabs? Will this be a new market? Will it create more influence on other graders? Yeah, to be honest with you, as I think about it more and more, I'm very much against it. I think that it just causes more of a premium that celebrities and popular people in the Pokemon community get to make more money off of the regular collector. Because part of why these booster packs are now worth more is that they're going to get these PSA slabs that are going to name the event, make it more special. And at the end of the day, that just puts more money in the pocket of Logan Paul and more money in the pocket of PSA. And I guess from a free market perspective, I can say, well, they deserve it. He's famous. He's worked very hard to be famous. He's worked very hard for people to like that. And that's just sort of the way the world works. I guess I just wish the world didn't work that way for those types of things. And I hate seeing, and I guess I wish he didn't take advantage of it maybe. If I'm being completely honest, it's like, yes, you can make extra money by having your and you can put your name on the hobby and you can build your brand. Like, he's forever building his brand through this and getting more and more popular and getting more support by having his names on those things. And he's extremely smart and savvy, Logan. But I just wish he didn't take all the angles. This is something I talk a lot about with my girlfriend about and my friends about. It's like, you can be very smart and see all of the angles in life and the angles that you can take to make more money and not take them because you feel like you have enough. You have enough attention, you have enough fame, you make enough money. You don't need to make more money. You don't need more attention. You don't need more fame. And I feel like that's an important thing. It's just my moral code and my ethics. And so I really don't like it. It also makes me not trust PSA as much because I think that, like, now that they're just gonna, like, decide to do things randomly, and they're gonna decide that person's a big enough star, and so we're gonna give that premium case, but we're not gonna notice this error over here. It's like, I just think they should just be a grading card company and just grade the grades, and it just feels like a marketing stunt and odd, and it's for kind of money and greed, and I don't see how it benefits the hobby and benefits the camaraderie and the connections and all of us kind of being on the same playing field. But the reverse of that, and I do think is true, is that this is an open market and people are willing to pay more for them. There is going to be a higher market for those Logan Paul cards because there is something special. The Logan Paul box breaks and openings are extremely fun and enjoyable to watch. So these are complicated things. There are not easy black and white answers for these types of questions. I think a lot of people are feeling all of these things, and that's where the frustration comes up. What I want to make a plea for is that we can respect each other's opinions. If someone really likes it, that we respect their opinion. If someone doesn't like it and it makes them uncomfortable, we can respect their opinion. I see a lot of people getting really angry at each other on Facebook and yelling at each other and shaming each other, and that's the type of stuff that, like, the Pokemon hobby, and I think we mostly do such a great job of this, and I think we're having more and more influencers come in the space who are just such positive forces on the hobby and are putting their audiences and other people before their own profits and their own fame and their own egos, honestly, that I think the hobby's in a really good place and can move in a better place. And the reality, thinking from that financial perspective, is the more altruists we have in this hobby, the more people are going to be wanting to be part of this hobby. The more people are going to enjoy this hobby. They're not going to get scared away. They're not going to run. And the more we are all going to, where there's going to be actual value to be a part of this hobby because it's fun. People aren't just here to make money. They're here to make friends, to collect cards that they love, to trade, to share. One of my favorite conversations I had on this channel is with Gary King Pokemon, where we talked about, what his experiences were in the hobby and what, and he loves his collection and wouldn't sell his collection, but in large part because he remembers when he got those cards. He remembers the relationships he made over the years, the connections, like how he got to travel the world and meet tons of interesting people. It's like that stuff is invaluable in life. The money, the cards, that stuff is not as important as, like, the memories and the feelings associated with all of this stuff. And so, so it's we're just gonna have to do our best to act the way that we hope others act and try and create and fight for the hobby that we want it to be. And if everyone does their part, we'll be in a great position. Rainy Day Collectible says, imagine wanting Logan Paul's name on your slab. Yeah, it's something. Hey, Drew is here. Def Drew is becoming a friend of mine. He invited me to join Clubhouse. Thank you, Drew, for doing that. I've been thoroughly loving it and enjoying it over there, and again, for people on Clubhouse, I hope we're all, again, this elite, it's right now, it's the app's in a little bit of an elitist place of how it's opening up and invite only, just like Facebook did in the beginning. Obviously a very effective marketing strategy that makes it in part seem kind of cooler and more hyped up than it actually might be. But in another part, it does create organic interest and demand, and gosh, branding is so interesting. And marketing is so interesting. But my hope is that a lot of us will be there together, and we can also, like, I want to hear a lot of your guys' actual voices and not just kind of be feeling like you guys know me and know what I sound like, but me having no idea, what you guys sound like. And Connor B says, how is it different than comic book pedigrees? So I am not a comic expert. Can you give me an example, Connor, of the comic book pedigrees? I'm not aware of the ones that have those pedigrees. That's my lack of knowledge. It probably isn't any different. Pedigrees do exist. Oh, Connor B says with CGC, anyone can add a pedigree to a slab. I didn't know that. That's super interesting. I have to look that up. I might change my opinion on what I said if that's true, Connor. And maybe that isn't on PSA. Maybe then it's more just like on kind of Logan Paul for taking advantage of that, or again, but it's sort of like, yeah, I don't know. Pokemon Classic says, and with all of these things, guys, like, I may change my mind in a month. You may change your mind. The people who are arguing with you and are angry at you may change their mind in a week or a month. Like, let people think critically and change their mind. I mean, when we look at, I just think it's crazy how people back themselves into a corner. It's like, this is the way that I think, and if people don't think like me, they're my enemies. And then they basically they live in echo chambers where if they hear new information that they disagree with, they just reject that information. Whereas, like, the appropriate thing to be like, oh, Connor just gave me some new information that CGC accepts pedigrees, and maybe maybe my take, although it sounded great and I believe in it and I think there may be good points to it, I didn't have the whole picture, and maybe now if I get more of a picture, I'll have a slightly different take, and that's part of being human, right? All right. Pokemon Classic says, Jake, I appreciate your ethical take on the Pokemon market. What are some of the ethical concerns you see right now, and some opportunities or steps we can take to be good steward of the hobby? So the things that I have been seeing, and why I made that video now, 7-8 months ago, I don't really know. That first video saying I see some concerns on, in the Pokemon hobby, was because I was seeing, just like what I saw in, like, the way people talk during the tech bubble, the way people talk during the crypto bubble, I saw people shilling, like increasing shilling for themselves, for their own brand, for their own cards. Everyone seemed to be more selfish, in it to make money. People were fighting more. People were more rude. People were trying to nickel and dime and take every little amount they could from people. The things that were great about the hobby are still, of course, here and will always be here. But there was also a lot more of that bubble type activity. One of the major signs of bubbles is increased fraud, increased scams, because what happens is bubbles are driven by greed and the wanting to make money, because what's happening is, and I've said this a million times on this channel, I know, I won't repeat it again and again, sorry. So it's I think the best thing you can do, and I've been toying with things on this channel, right? It's like sometimes I called people out a little bit directly, even if it was softly. Got some negative pushback from that. I got some negative feedback from that. People weren't used to hearing someone say anything negative about anyone, or anything critical about anyone, or anything even just asking a question. It's like I've been critical or said something that I didn't think was right or fair to some of my best friends in the hobby. And then other people would see those comments and be like, oh my gosh, a feud, you guys hate each other now. It's like, no, like, I think that they didn't handle that video in the most ethical way. They can say it to me, Jake, I think you're being too negative. I think you're being too critical. I think you didn't think this through. It's like that type of conversation will be helpful. I mean, part of it is that we're a very youthful, young hobby. And so part of it is that, we're likely all quite a bit, hopefully more immature now than we all will be in 10 years. And as a hobby matures, you'll see more of that maturity. Although, I spent this whole day in the sports cards hobby yesterday. And all of those behaviors, the hyping their own stuff, shilling and pushing their own cards without giving good reasons why they're valuable, not being transparent with what they own, doing massive buyouts, pump and dump type schemes, it's all very prevalent there. So, I think trying to develop your own ethical character, your own integrity, figure out who you are as a person, and then every day trying to do that in the hobby and try and figure out ways of encouraging other people to do that in the hobby. I'm so against, like, canceling people and cancel culture. And cancel culture has been on here a lot longer than just a couple of years. I mean, this is something that has long happened where people who people disagree with or people who people, just who people, there are people who get canceled because they're someone's competition, and they wanted to cancel that person because they were taking views away from them, or they were taking money away from them, they were taking attention away from them. Like, there's some vicious people in the world who want to make money, and their sole focus is power and money, and they will crap on anyone else around them. And if someone eats into that, they will pretend to be their friend and then stab them in the back. Like, that is the world to some extent. So I think what's important is that, and this is, going back to some of my thesis work when I was younger and some of my graduate school work and game theory and economics, is that groups of altruists outcompete and do better than groups of cheaters, as they're called biologically speaking. Altruists are people who have spontaneous altruistic impulses to help each other and cooperate for the greater good. Cheaters are people who have that instinct to always put themselves first in all situations, no matter what, and they'll never do anything for you unless they get at least as much back or more back from you, and they go through the world and they live that way. And the problem so cheaters will always rise to the top in economic systems unless altruistic people can recognize the cheaters and not deal with them and engage with them. Because groups of altruists, if you and I cooperate and we do mutually beneficial things, you and I will do better than two cheaters who are just cheating each other and hurting each other and pulling each other down. And so but it's more than just being cooperative and reciprocal. It's actually caring about other human beings and not putting profit first. And I think we're losing that a bit in our society right now. I know we're going deep into ethics and philosophy here, because I think, there's a buzzword in entrepreneurship of provide value. But oftentimes when I hear people say I'm trying to provide value, and even when I say it sometimes, I feel like I'm providing value to get something, right? I'm providing value so that I make money or that I build my brand or this or that. Versus I provide value to others because intrinsically in me providing value to others, that's my goal. That's what provides me meaning. That's why I get up every day. That gives my life an actual purpose. Versus I'm providing value to others to get some third thing, something unrelated to just the fact that the reward, the intrinsic reward in and of itself is to help someone, in a real way, in a way that they feel helped, that they're actually helped. So, as many of you guys know, I'm a therapist, so this is stuff I think about a lot, and I think's super critical. So in your question of what you can do for the Pokemon market, that's the type of stuff. Behave that way, try to make decisions that way, be that type of person, be that type of leader, whether you have a YouTube channel, an Instagram, a Facebook, treat people well, try and help each other out, take that extra second to do something for someone for free, care about them as a human being, and and we'll all be better off. Most fundamentally, our souls will be better off in an emotional sort of fulfilled way, and then secondarily, financially, we'll also be better off as long as we are able to figure out how to deal with people who are basically bleeding others dry. And there's always going to be that, but again, hurt people, that type of, it's a cliche, of course, but there's obviously a lot of truth to that. And when you see someone hurting others, don't attack them and hurt them. What you should do is realize that the best way to help everyone succeed is to include them. And we want every person here, like whenever I criticize the channel, I sincerely want them to succeed. I want them to be a positive force in the community. I want them to make money, and I want them to do well. And that's the type of attitude that I think builds communities and builds things that are valuable and rather than tear them down. So that's the mindset, I guess, or the types of concepts I think about. But, these are things that I'm sure I'm going to continue to think about throughout my life. And it's as you can probably hear as I talk it out loud, these are conversations you should be having with yourself, having with your friends, trying to figure out what makes sense to you. We all have our different perspectives and upbringings, and that's going to inform your views on these types of things, and going to help you sort of be wise in a way that I can't possibly be wise, because everyone who's listening to this has wisdom, has lived experience that I don't have, and you have access to things that can help people that I don't have because of that, and skills and abilities that I don't have that you can give to others. So, it's kind of it's more of a Pokemon Classics. I have more of a mindset perspective, because I think for everyone it's different. I think for Pat, it's making people have fun. It's bringing people together. It's not taking advantage of his audience for money. It's caring about them. It's having fun. It's putting great music on the background and making the Pokemon cards look awesome. For me, it's helping people think critically about finances and about investing and about what makes them happy in this hobby and how to build their collection. And, everyone's going to have a different talent or different ability. Every creator is going to have their niche and their way to bring something to the people, to people. And I think that's what it's all about. Masonberry says, how far do you see Pokemon going with their recently announced promised reprints? Is any set or card immune from getting reprinted in your mind? So one thing, I think there are kind of two different ways to think about reprints now. One is like an evolution style reprinting of a set, which I think they can definitely do that of any set, where they can reprint the same arts, although they'll be a different. They won't be the exact card, they won't have the exact same look, so there'll be some differentiation there. But as far as like just a straight up reprint, I don't think that there's any time frame that they wouldn't go back. I think that they're going to behave in whatever they think is, from a business perspective, that is in their best interest. So it just creates risk, so you have to figure out, do you think that it's worth the risk investing in some of these modern boxes because you don't think they will reprint and you're willing to take the hit if they do? And then even if they do, which I think is a really good point, even if they do reprint, they're not going to reprint nearly enough, which is what we've seen, right? When they've done these reprints recently, all the supply gets eaten immediately anyway, and the prices just continue to go up. Sometimes they retrace a little first. I think some things probably have retraced to the point where they haven't gotten quite back to their highs, but I'm not even sure about that now. But I think that's the type of stuff I'd be thinking about. So. Let's see. Pocket Monster Dom says, hey Jake, asked above what you think of the Evolutions Charizard Holo in a PSA slab. The 10s will continue to be valuable, but what about the tens of thousands of 8s and 9s at PSA right now? Yeah, so I think even the 10s, Dom, people are underestimating how many 10s there will be. to me, the PSA 10 Unlimited Charizard, if that's going for 10,000, the evolutions probably should be going for 1,000 to me. Because I think there will be similar amounts of unlimited base set to evolutions. And I wouldn't be comfortable. I would definitely not be comfortable saying that evolution should be half the price. And why I say that, Dom, to quickly go over the math for you. Even though like 1 out of every 5 base set unlimited Charizard gets a PSA 10 versus one every, I don't know what it is right now, 40 or 50, whatever it is. Because there's going to be so many more evolutions Charizards graded, like maybe we may only have like 5% of the evolution Charizards graded. If you actually extrapolate that out and do the math, you're going to have probably a similar or maybe even more evolution PSA 10 Charizards in the world than you're going to have base set unlimited PSA 10 Charizards in the world. So this is part of trying to think about that, the long term, what it's going to look like. And once people see that, they're going to say, well, why would I buy the evolutions PSA 10 Charizard when there's the same amount as the base set unlimited Charizard? If the evolutions Charizard is half the price, but the box is 1/10 the price, why am I paying so much more for the evolutions Charizard? So I would expect either the evolutions to come down or the base set unlimited one to go up at some point as those numbers fill out. But definitely, I 100% agree with you, Dom. The rest of your question with the 9s and the 8s, I would not be holding evolutions right now, 8s and 9s, and those sorts of things as investments. I think, just speaking, and I hate saying this stuff, and I hate giving direct advice, and please do what you think is best. I'm not a financial advisor, and this could end up definitely being wrong. But if I were purely acting from a financial perspective, I would want to sell those this year and then wait sometime this year. Maybe I'd wait for a few months because I don't think that the PSA supply is going to come back for a while. Wait to see what happens with Logan Paul. Wait to see what happens with the booster boxes. Maybe I think it's going to go up even a little more. And then I would sell into the hype. And then I would buy back, if I wanted to buy them back, when a lot of the cards hit the market. But it's also easy for me to say because I don't really like evolutions that much. So if I were to sell into the hype and then they would go up a lot more, I would feel very happy and comfortable with the gains that I had. And I'd feel like I made the right decision, and I'd feel very okay with missing out on the future gains. So whenever you sell into hype, there's always risk that you're selling too early. But there's also, if you hold, there's always risk you're selling too late. So there's never going to be that surefire time, as we all know. But I think your thinking there is exactly right, Dom. With that. Royalty Gaming is here. What's up, Sagar? Love you, love your channel. Thank you for joining. So many of my favorites here. It's great to see you guys. Thanks for joining us today. So Juliana says, I think cancel culture makes sense. Why would you want someone associated with your brand that has values that clash with your brand? So to me, that's not what cancel culture is. Cancel culture to me is we're going to ruin someone's reputation so badly off of one or two or a few things that they've done that they're not only are they not going to be able to work with me, but they're not going to be able to work with anyone, and or if they work with anyone, they're my enemy. So letting someone go and saying we have differences of opinion and that's okay is a healthy way to end a relationship, whether that's professional or personal. An unhealthy way is I hate you so much and I'm so angry with you that not only do I need to end this relationship with you but I need everyone in society to hate you too, and for us to blackball you and push you out, and we're not going to give you a path back in, which I think is a key thing. Now, is there ever an appropriate time to cancel someone or an idea from culture? There are. Where that is, nobody knows. And that's what's tricky, because some ideas and some ways of being can be so dangerous and so hurtful and so negative and people can be so stuck in their ways that and we're not going to get anywhere in that conversation because it's this sliding, it's too vague to pinpoint that down without like specifics. But I don't know, one day maybe we'll have like a philosophy, politics, economics, broader conversation instead of just purely the Pokemon, although I know we definitely try and do both, and both are important. Swami says, E4 can get pretty toxic, laugh out loud. Yeah. Yeah. It can. I mean, I really like some of the guys there. Some of the moderators, they work really hard. They're really nice guys. There are plenty of people there that you can have great conversations with, and then there are times when you'll say something or you'll ask for help and a bunch of people will just like attack you and say you're an idiot or, and I don't get it at all. Like, if someone new in the hobby asks me a quote-unquote stupid question, and it's not stupid because they're new, guys, like, I'm going to want to help them so that they don't make mistakes. Now, does it get frustrating or irritating to have people ask you questions over and over again? Sure, but they're posting them publicly in a forum. You don't have to answer. It's just crazy. Like, it's just such a weird, and honestly, and this is very critical, but it is a toxic response to people. It's like, if you don't want to help them, just let someone else help them. You don't, and I think part of it too is people who have been here longer to kind of talk about it psychologically a little bit. They want to feel like they're better than everyone. And they also want to potentially guard the information for themselves from a competitive standpoint. Which I get, it's yeah, but it's not black and white again with E4. It's one of the best resources in Pokemon for knowledge, and I've learned so much from the people there. Recently, I was just reading. And I suggest everyone to sign up for E4, by the way, and go on E4. And continue to suggest that and grow that, because it's an amazing community and people have worked incredibly hard, and we owe so much to the people who started that and the people who run E4. So we gotta give credit where credit is due with it. But like, I just saw an amazing article. Like, some of my favorite guys make these articles there on like no rarity and on like the different printings of like base set Japanese, and it's stuff that I'd sort of heard before, but to be able to see it all in one space is just amazing. Brian Kim says, interesting comments on cancel culture. Unfortunately, I think cancel culture has turned into a buzzword, and it means something quite different to different people. Yeah, for sure, Brian. That's a great point too. Whenever we say any buzzword, it's like in your community, depending on the way your community uses that word, you're going to hear something, and you may have a positive or negative reaction to that word, whereas someone else may be using that word in a very different way. So we have to be very careful when we hear buzzwords, and thank you for saying this, Brian, that we listen to how the person is using it and how the person means it, and we don't assume something about their political beliefs. A lot of people on this channel have assumed things about my political beliefs, either that I'm very left or that I'm very right or that I'm very all over the place, off of like very simple comments that I've made, just using a certain word, and I get it. I do that too. I make that same mistake, and that shows us kind of where we are as a culture a bit on these types of topics. A lot of groupthink. Let's lower the groupthink. Joe Banker says, I feel like a lot of Season D4 members like to silence those who are complaining about prices stayed to keep their collection values high. Yeah, I think that, I don't really know. John. I think that there's certainly going to be people who are wanting to, or who are intentionally hyping up the market and continuing to try to build the market up and hate people who warn people. I think that there are people who really do feel very bullish, and they genuinely think that people who are complaining or saying that and complaining in quotes there, like you put it, because it's not really complaining most of the time, but just commenting on how it's concerning that a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money when prices go up 10x in a short window, and everyone says it's going to go up 4 times more. That feels that feels like dangerous and risky and bubble-esque, and when that those people are just need to level up or need to evolve or need, I've heard those like Pokemon terms people have said to me, or and I very much disagree. I like I agree and disagree. I mean, it depends how they mean that. I very much disagree that people who are worried about other people losing a lot of money and are concerned with the market getting into a bubble and then popping and lots of people leaving the hobby and it damaging the hobby forever long term, because what can happen with bubbles when they're really big and not handled correctly, and when trust is lost, because it's all about trust, right? If you trust people in the community, if you trust the leaders of the community, if the community leaders don't lie to you, they give you honest information, and then they follow through on their word, these prices will continue to grow, and people, because there's value here, because there's value in that trust, there's value in those connections, there's value in the cards, in the way they look, in the way they feel, and the connections those Pokemon have to our lives. But that can be quickly eroded, that trust, if people are found to just kind of be pushing things up or condescending to people as a strategy to grow their brand, whether that is to grow their brand as someone who knows more than other people, or grow their brand, or grow the Pokemon brand as something that never goes down and only goes up, those sorts of things. Basic Trainer says, the First Amendment needs to be a literal thing. I enjoy having conversations with people that disagree with me on any topic. Too many people can't simply take an opinion for an opinion. Yeah, I think the tricky thing is when the opinions are so emotional, and I'm sure you would agree with this, Basic Trainer, like, that it cuts to like such a deep core ethical belief of yours that you find it so offensive that someone else can believe that. And what do we do about that as a culture? And I think that's what we're in right now, is that whether you're on the left or the right, you have these deeply held beliefs, likely, about the way that people should behave and people should be. And when someone disagrees with that, or you think someone disagrees with that, or you misunderstand them, people have a psychological reaction of like fear and anxiety and anger, because it's scary. And I get that, right? And I very much get that. And how to solve that? You solve that by bringing people back to the middle constantly, by trying to build consensus. I mean, part of what I believed, and believe in this country is that bipartisanship and working together and trying to hear each other and understand different people's backgrounds, being humble and realizing that none of us really know everything. None of us really, none of us should be so sure about what we believe, but yet we should still fight for it until we realize, that we made a mistake. Very complicated moving forward and doing the right thing. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Another cliche, but another important concept is that often when we're extremely radical and well-intentioned, we can lose sight of the counter arguments to the thing that we're fighting so hard for. But the fact that people are fighting so hard for something, there's also a lot of beauty and good in that. And those people need to be appreciated for what they're trying to do and what they believe in. So very complicated. All right. So we're going to do about 20, 25 more minutes if we want to bring things back to Pokemon a little bit. Pokemonster Dom says, this is going to sound a bit insensitive, but what about when you're wrong? Acknowledging that you're wrong and moving forward respectfully. Lots of folks act as if they can't do any wrong, and it's BS. So, in terms of how I've been wrong, so I can talk about my own investing, how I've been wrong, if you'd like to hear a little bit about that. That could be interesting. So, the mistake that I made, so I've made two financial mistakes. I sold a Level X card for $400 that ended up going to $1,500, and I sold it a couple weeks before it popped. Now, I have 100 of those. So did I make a mistake? I mean, financially I made a mistake, but my counter argument to that would be like, I was starting to thin out. I wanted to thin out my position a little bit. It had already moved up a lot, and I think it was a good decision to sell. So, but financially it was a mistake. What other mistakes have I made? In my own portfolio. Oh, I did sell one unlimited Charizard at around 1,800 because I thought it might go down to 1,000, and it only ended up going down to about 1,600. So I ended up rebuying it for about the same price. So it wasn't so much a mistake, but it didn't do great. In terms of like stuff I've talked about on the channel where I've been wrong, you may disagree with this, but I think people who are watching really closely would actually see, and I could go back and watch my videos. I'm sure there were things that I said right or wrong, but I try very careful to talk about concepts and ideas and not about specific prices. So I very much still think that a lot of the items that I've said are overvalued all along are still overvalued. I thought Evolutions is overvalued at 400. I think it's way overvalued at 1,000. I still believe that. Now, I also said, and you can go back and watch my videos if you want, but every time I talked about Evolutions, I tried to say, but it could go to 1,000. It could go to 1,000. I literally said that time and time again because I understand how bubbles work, and I understand how hype works. And when something can quickly move to 400, it can quickly move to 1,000. So I do kind of think, Dom, that people who think that I've been wrong on this channel aren't watching closely enough and don't know that I'm really talking about broader concepts on how to invest and understanding that there's no right way to time things, if that's what you're referring to, Dom. I think people in this market are thinking, most channels say you should buy this or you should sell that or this is going to happen or that's going to happen. No one can do that. No one has a crystal ball. And so it's more about teaching fundamentals, and I don't think I'm wrong about those fundamentals, if that makes sense. And I feel like I've been really careful on this channel to talk about it. I really stand behind all of that stuff still. I stand behind all of the bubble stuff I felt in this hobby. I actually think that I was ahead of everything and got it really, really right. I think if you go back and you watch my channel, I literally, a month before Logan Paul came in, was talking about influencers and hype and how if Pokemon becomes cool again, that the thing that was limiting Pokemon the most is that most adults felt like it was just a child's thing. But that if influencers came in or if people came in and someone like Gary Vee to make it cool, it would blow up, and then that's what happened, So, but I don't think a lot of people have, it's YouTube. First of all, my videos are 3 hours, so people are going to watch like little snippets. They're going to hear me say one thing, they're going to take that out of context. They're going to think that that's exactly what I think. They're not going to hear my other thought process on it, and they're going to say I'm wrong about something or I'm this or I'm that, and that's always going to happen. One thing I did wrong is I should have bought for another 2 months. I stopped buying at around August, and I should have bought August and September. So I put in about $80,000 of my own money, of some of my stock money into Pokemon. I started putting it right before the pandemic, and I bought extremely aggressively for about 3 months. Less than that. I bought extremely aggressively for about 3 months, and I started buying about a month and a half before the pandemic, and then I started buying sort of like a month and a half into the pandemic. Then when I started making those videos about warning people, that's when I really started not buying as much. I was buying little bits here and there slowly, and I was putting most of my money in other collectibles. But I should have spent a little bit more time buying because really it hit its peak. I thought it was going to hit its peak around in September. And I actually think I would have been right potentially if Logan Paul hadn't come in and kind of blown it up even further. And I think we kind of saw that because it actually kind of came back to the pre-Logan Paul prices. And the reason I was watching every month the volatility of sales, and in September the sales really slowed down. But that, again, goes to this concept of, like, you can't time markets. It's way too big of a market. It's way too difficult to time things like that. And so I feel like I've done really well this year in terms of keeping a level head for myself, not panic buying or panic selling too much. I've sold stuff that I felt like was really overvalued, wasn't going to have as long of legs, and I'm holding stuff that I still believe in, that I'm bullish in the long run. And I feel like that's been the message in the channel. But again, I'm in a position where I can afford to lose all of the money I put into Pokemon because I have other assets, because I have stocks, because I built up other things, and because I have a career outside of this. And so I think I'm kind of against anyone doing this, you know, unless you're doing it as a business and you're really a flipper and you're really, really engaged. Like, again, not a financial advisor here, but I kind of think that like it's a safer route in life, maybe less fun, but to, put stuff that gives you dividends, put stuff that you can start developing that passive income from a few different sources, and then you can use some of that to eventually put into Pokemon cards, that sort of thing, if you think they're a good asset long term. So what do you guys think about all of that? And Dom, I'm not sure. I think you were addressing that to me, but I wanted to make sure. And I think that's something I've thought a lot about. And I've actually wanted to make a video about like how I've been wrong, or the ways that I feel like I've been wrong this year. And my interpretation, and I should go back a little and watch some of those videos, because I'm sure I did say more things that were wrong and I've just blocked them out because for like self-protection or something. We all do that, as human beings, and I'm not consciously aware of any of those things. But I'm sure there was like days where I was really irritated and angry, and I probably said something too strongly negative on something or someone. I even apologized in one video, I remember, because I felt like people were making good arguments, with me, but I was just getting so frustrated hearing the same arguments, and I was getting frustrated being called negative, and like I didn't care about the hobby, and that I was just trying to hurt the hobby, and being kind of misrepresented so much from my perspective of who I am and what I was trying to do. And for me, it was like, I hear you, Dom, that it wasn't about me. But I think it's a good point anyway, and can hopefully give people perspective on sort of this process. But, for me, it was sort of like I'm giving away what I think is free knowledge, and I'm getting back hate and scorn and negativity. Because... And that's very difficult. And so what I did, I thought about closing the channel for a while there, and I was making less videos because I was like, well, I believe in the message that I'm trying to say here. I believe that other people are taking advantage of people and trying to make as much money as possible, and they're being rewarded for it. So the channels that were blowing up, I felt like we're all hyping up the cards, and we're all going to really hurt people, and we're giving people bad advice. And meanwhile, channels like mine, where I felt like we were being moderate and talking fundamentals, were not growing and were getting hated on. So it was hard, but I stuck it out because I'm stubborn and competitive, and I don't like giving up on things that I do. And that's definitely a big part of it. But two, I felt like if I believed this, I should hold to my convictions. And even if I ended up being wrong, I would just admit that afterwards, and that would be good for the Pokemon community anyway. And that it'd be better for me to really say how I felt rather than kind of BS you guys and be fake positive or fake whatever, just to kind of get you guys to like me or build the brand, that sort of thing. Jeremy McNally says you were wrong about Japanese vending series being before base set. Yeah, so I've been wrong on 2 of my videos, I think, Jeremy. That's hilarious. Jeremy, I love you, Jeremy, and you've been here probably the whole time. So I think in like my second video, to be fair to me, Jeremy, I do all my videos off the top of my head, mostly with unscripted notes. So although I like knew in somewhere in my head that the order that it was 96 for base and that 98 was for vending, I in the middle of the video basically just said that vending was before base set. So yes, I was wrong about that. And I was also wrong and got corrected by Hisoka. You guys should follow his channel also. Really, guy who knows so much. I was wrong. I said something incorrect in my video about Japanese. What did I do? Oh, yeah, the pull rates on Power Keepers. I thought that the pull rates on Power Keepers... I read somewhere that the pull rates on Power Keepers for the Gold Stars was different than the pull rates for the other sets. But my point in all of this is to show you guys how, I think in part, how careful I am and how much I care about giving you guys 100% accurate information. And when I do make a mistake, as you see on both of those videos, I quickly go back and correct them in the thing. And you also have to understand that this is all a huge community experience, because I'm constantly learning new things all the time, and there are constantly things that I'm going to get wrong. But what you can do is try to be really aware of them and tough with yourself and try to make up for them. And I take that stuff very seriously. So I appreciate, thank you for all the nice positive comments here, about me trying to do that. I appreciate that. Proverb says, Jake, you aren't allowed to be wrong, JK. Pat says, this is why I really want to help improve the quality of your channel visually, because the content is amazing and so important, but people here on YouTube won't find it as fast unless you do many of those. So I think for me, Pat, I want to give you good information to use on your channel and collaborate with you in that way, because I think that you're just the person who's so likable and so skilled and can reach so many people. And then I think Squeaks is also better than I am. And I kind of feel like Squeaks, like, I think there's a place for me in my personality, and particularly like my psychological and my reading of the market. And I love doing this, so I'm just going to keep doing it, of course. But I think that Squeaks is learning the video side and is very smart and has great knowledge, and I think really cares about people and doing a really good job. And so I kind of view his channel as publicly saying all these thoughts, as I always do, as taking a lot of that space. I think for me, I'm not doing this as a business. I don't plan on doing it as a business. I would be interested in doing this as a bit of a side hustle while my main business is like therapy. So I don't need to be super huge. Like, it's why I started the Patreon, just getting a few Patreon, subscribers a month, people who really like it, who support it. And then I really like Clubhouse, because Clubhouse is a place where I can actually hear your guys' voices and we can talk. What I will feel good about at the end of the day, I have two goals. My goals are to enjoy this, provide good information for the people who want to hear it and who want to be involved in a channel like this, and make enough money that I feel like I don't feel pressure, because eventually, I'm going to have kids, I'm building more and more responsibilities into my life, and the amount of time it's going to take to run a channel like this and be up on the information and do it accurately is a huge amount. And so I have a number in mind that I would like to hit eventually in terms of how much the channel makes. And if I can hit that number, I'll feel comfortable. And then if it ever gets bigger, that's when, and I talked to Pat about this, but that's when we could do charity things with that, other sorts of things. Pat says, that makes sense. And I do forward past that info, but I feel like I'm taking without bringing value back to you, which is why I want to do all I can to help. Oh, I think your channel, and I said this to you, your channel is going to bring so much value to the Pokemon community. That brings me value. Sagar brings me value every night when he does his stream, because I watch that stream. You bring me value in your videos because I like your videos. It makes me happy. It makes me feel good about the future of the Pokemon hobby. When I watch Squeak's video, it makes me happy. It makes me feel good. When I watch Pokemon Radar, when I watch Omnipoke, my friends from the community, Z and G, So, yeah, but I appreciate that, Pat. If I do ever get serious, you're the man that I would definitely reach out to, because you are, you know what you're doing. You're a professional over there. I think too, it's part of it, guys. It's I'm just not passionate about that stuff. Like all the work Pat put into the sound effects and the music and the fire, it creates so much value for you guys, and it's so fun. But it's not my personality, and it's not my passion like it is his. I think that I like talking about ideas and having conversations and connecting, and so. But we're all figuring out. It's interesting, and it's kind of interesting. I'm an external processor, so I'll just continue sharing it with everyone listening or who wants to listen. All right. Spencer Card Collector says, should I dump my Evolutions boxes now or keep holding? I have no idea. So. Yeah, so generally speaking, one thing I will say about that is that historically, and we have to take everything in the hobby with a grain of salt historically, because this is a new time in Pokemon. So people who quote prices from 2016 and say that the same patterns that Pokemon has always gone up and there are retraces, but it'll always go up in the future. Like, this is a different time. So we have to be very careful. But if we do, we should still look at it and think about it. Generally speaking, when prices get up to 1,000 or when prices get up to 10,000, like those types of numbers, and people who list things for prices know this very well, there's a psychological thing that happens that it gets harder for it to become more valuable. It feels very different for people to pay $900 than over $1,000 often. And so when it hits those $1,000 barrier or the $10,000 barrier, and this is true for the stock market too, and all sorts of things, is it creates this sort of number psychological barrier where people stop wanting to pay more. So as soon as an item goes over 1,000 to like 1,100, it could be free to ride up to 1,000 to 1,500 or to 2,000 when it will again get a little bit of that barrier, that psychological barrier. And so when you're if you are a flipper, understanding the psychology around numbers is extremely important in knowing what's going to happen with those prices. So the way that is important here is because now that we're at that 1,000 point, it made a lot of sense for it to kind of cool down and rest in that 1,000 point, because 1,000 is a very round number. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. It's definitely retraced since then. There's a lot of momentum that's gone out of that product that I've seen. It hasn't sold as quickly. I think there's a lot more negativity. Once the prices went up on that, a lot more negativity came out and pushed it back down a little bit. I have been seeing boxes sell in the 600s, in the 700s, in the 800s. I've also seen a few boxes sell at 1,000 still. So I don't know where it's going to go. Have no idea. But my long-term feelings on that product hasn't changed. Proverb says we need a massive Zoom call with Patricianus, Mason Berry, ZNG, and maybe Sakari or Squeaks. Yeah, so I'm gonna be doing some like roundtables with some of my Pokemon friends, both on YouTube and then also on Clubhouse soon. Really fun. I agree. It's great because they can argue with me and we can disagree. We can go back and forth on things, and you guys can hear different perspectives all at once. I think it provides extra value. Mason says, I'm always down to talk shop with anyone. Yeah. It was definitely great having you on, Mason, a few weeks ago now, when maybe even 3 weeks ago, I'm not sure how long it's been, maybe even a month when we had our talk here. It was fun. We should definitely do something again soon. So let's just get a couple more questions. Pocket Monster Dom says it's two different words of entertainment. These talks to me are more valuable even without all the bells and whistles. Yeah, I think that is the idea. I definitely want. My interest is providing the arguments, the ideas, the talking about economics, fundamentals, value, principles, collecting, moral topics, ethical topics. I'm not interested in running, a channel that's focused on making the cards look good. In part because it's not my passion, but also I don't have that skill set. I think if I had some of that skill set, and maybe this is where I should try to grow myself a little bit, guys, for you, is that in some of the part of the problem is I do have a really great collection. And so like getting Pat over to my house and like being able to show off the cards to you would be really cool, right? For one video or figuring out at least for one video or a couple videos when I show my collection to actually make them look really cool so that people can enjoy it. That would be probably worth doing, that type of thing. Whereas I think most of the content is probably fine where it's at. Kevin G says, could you talk about what you've been looking at in the sports cards market, Jake? Yeah, so I haven't been buying anything, Kevin, in the sports cards market. I've more just been talking to people to get a sense of where their mindset is, and how people are sort of behaving in that hobby as compared to the Pokemon hobby. So yesterday there was a lot of talk mostly about basketball, a lot of talk about the WNBA, a lot of talk about everyone saying what should I buy next? What's the next big thing? What's the undiscovered thing? Similar to Pokemon. Lots of people asking other people's opinions about what to do. Lots of money talk. Not a lot of what's your favorite player? What do you enjoy about sports cards collecting talk, right? A lot of financial talk. And that can be a dangerous sign. So Ken says, Jake, when are you going to draw a shiny Gyarados and a guy in a boat on the painting behind you? Yeah, that would be quite a move. Talk about one of my favorite cards, if not like my favorite potential art in the hobby. That Shining Gyarados card is amazing. James Spider says, laugh out loud, all my 90s B-ball rookies are like $1 to $5. Yeah, I've got some Kobe rookies that have gone up quite a bit in value that I probably will get graded. Kevin G says, thanks, Jake. I've researched the sports cards market a bit and gathered similar feelings. Lots of money talk, yeah. Yeah, and I talked to a couple guys who've been in that hobby for 20 plus years and have bought and sold, thousands and thousands and thousands of things, and talk to them about their feelings about people like Vegas Dave, I think his name is, and Gary Vee, and just big influencers and big people talking about it and how it's going to affect it and what they see, and they basically have very similar sentiments about their hobby that I have about this hobby. So a lot of similar stuff going on. I don't know Basic Trainer about that PokeTuber, but maybe someone else can help you. Do any of you guys collect? Are any of you guys collecting sports cards also? Or I know that some of you, I think, I always forget exactly who, but some have come from the sports card world over to here for sure. Not sure what you guys are doing. I haven't opened any modern sports packs. It'd be something that I would do, though, for fun. I like, what's their channel? Oh no, I forget the name. The Pokemon opening channel that also does sports. Whatever, I forgot their name right now, but I like their channel. I like watching that. Jake, if you could pick any other Pokemon to have a dedicated set, like Eevee, what would it be? Like my favorite Pokemon, or a Pokemon that I would want to see a lot in a set. I have a lot of favorites. I don't feel like when people ask me my favorite Pokemon, I have a lot of Pokemon that come into my head. Usually the first ones that come into my head are Dragonite, Alakazam, Gyarados, Mewtwo. I think it's because I played with all of the Pokemon Loot Box, yeah, exactly, guys, Loot Box. I think because I played so much of the Pokemon Game Boy game Red and Blue when I was a kid, and I played with so many different Pokemon, I kind of developed relationships with a lot of them through that. And I remember when I was a kid collecting the cards, I definitely was really thrilled to get the Charizard, and the Charizard was a big deal, but I was equally as thrilled and excited to interestingly complete the sets and get each Pokemon than I was to just have the Charizard. And funny enough, as an adult collector, I'm very similar, where I like, when I'm really collecting for myself, I like collecting complete binder sets of everything and of all of the arts that I really like and all the Pokemon, not just the chase card. And I've always felt like the chase card tends to be, although very cool often and a Pokemon that I love, kind of overvalued for me versus the rest. So I think it's one thing that I think about that might be interesting in the long term. Sports, there's such an obvious reason why Michael Jordan is worth more than your 10th person on the bench that doesn't play, or 11th person on the bench that doesn't play, because of their statistics, because of their all that sorts of thing. In Pokemon, it's a lot more subjective. It's sort of like, well, there are fundamentals there. They're sort of like, was it a starter? Was it played a lot? Was a gym lead? Did a gym leader use that Pokemon? Was it featured in an important part in one of the games? Did Pokemon talk about it or put it as a central character in the anime series? Like, there are reasons for sure why we like some more than others, but I do think that it's a little bit more malleable potentially. So I'm interested to see how that affects prices over time. Pokemon Dom says, imagine if Shaq came in here. That'd be hilarious. Be interesting talking to Shaq. John Banker says, so I'm gonna take. So let's do till 5:30 p.m. So I'm gonna do 20 more minutes. I know I keep doing this. We're gonna stay a little longer. Gonna do 20 more minutes till 5:30. John Banker says, Jake, thoughts on McDonald's 25th promos? I think that I like them. I think that they're cool looking. I think that where I'm going to go, what I went to is I went to make sure that I had completed my vintage McDonald's goals before the new McDonald's cards came out, because to me, the old McDonald's cards are still undervalued, for sure, some of them. And the new McDonald's cards were getting so much hype and attention, I was wondering if afterwards that was going to move attention to cards that I really wanted to buy from some of those vintage McDonald's sets. I also think that, the price point of like $75, $80, $100, on those like modern, I think it was really $75 is what I was seeing at its height. And maybe it's higher now, you guys can let me know, but, for like the Pikachu, like the is so high when we compare it to like what some of the prices are still on like the Sunset Mew. Let's see if I think I have them around here. Actually, I can show them to you guys. Cards like these, if you guys know these cards. Try to show you without the glare. These old 2002 McDonald's cards that are just like incredible art. Again, if Pat's camera was here, we could you'd be able to see how beautiful, particularly the Mew. The Mew's phenomenal. But again, these are types of cards. Like I could do a whole video on these cards right now, and it'd probably be smart for me to do it because it would get traction because people are talking and typing in McDonald's Pokemon. And if I was an actual YouTuber and I thought about strategies of like getting in the search words and trying to build the channel, and I would make a McDonald's video and I'd say something like the real, the real McDonald or the original McDonald's, cards, and people would be searching that and they'd come to my channel, they discover it and they'd watch and that sort of thing. But it's like I kind of like intentionally try to not do that. So both of those are McDonald's promos from 2002. Very cool cards. So generally when people ask me about modern, my answer is like, I like it, but for its price, there are better things in vintage still. Drew says #shorts. Yeah, Drew and I were in a conversation on Clubhouse with some YouTubers who were talking about how like shorts are the new thing. I know, Pat, you did a couple of the shorts as well on your channel as a way to like grow your channel, and I just don't want to like grow it. I don't want YouTube to become a grind. I want it to be fun. I want the channel to grow in the way that feels like me. And if it doesn't grow, then it doesn't grow. And as long as I can make enough money and have enough fun with a smaller channel, it'll still be great. That's how I feel right now. I mean, we'll see if it changes. Pokemon Dom says, Jake, my favorites are the Charmander and Bulbasaur holos from Japan. Yeah, I have those too. Dom. My favorite actually is the Squirtle of those three. That like the cute, like big-eyed Squirtle. But all three of those cards are phenomenal. And then the Pikachu holo too. Yeah, those are fantastic, Dom. I agree with you. Def True says, what do you think about the Teal Error Squirtle? I don't know what that is. What's the Teal Error Squirtle? I'll have to look that up. If you can let me know what that is, Andrew. Pat says, haha, I did the same title for my Lucky Stadium card special delivery Charizard. Yeah, I mean, listen, you know all the strategies and all of the things to do, Pat, but it's like I'm in favor of you becoming big because with great power becomes responsibility, and so I'm glad you're on that algorithm game. I know you were saying last night that you talked to Mr. Beast a little about some strategies, so I have a lot of faith that that you know what you're doing and you're gonna be huge and do a great job. Swami says, was interesting to hear biggest mistakes. What about luckiest purchases? Yeah, these are great. And I should make videos on this. Even Bitcoin or Tesla doesn't have to be Pokemon. Luckiest purchase. So let me think. I mean, honestly, like my luckiest purchases are some of the modern stuff I purchased that I didn't think would go up. I have tons of like rainbow rares from Sun and Moon and tons of Hidden Fates that I didn't buy. Like I didn't think I was going to make money on them, but I bought them because I really enjoyed them, and they've all gone up a lot. So that's, we could say, lucky, or that was not planned. What else? Most things I've planned. I'm pretty, I always try and achieve both the financial freedom, stability to grow my wealth with that sort of stuff, while I'm also trying to have fun, do my collector goals, and doing both at the same time. So I'm pretty intentional about my purchases. I've definitely gotten super lucky in terms of like winning auctions. So I've talked about an auction on this channel. I spent $3,000 on an auction that is now, when I added up the value of the cards from that auction after I graded all the cards, is worth $300,000 today. So I spent $3,000. I turned $3,000 into $300,000 on an auction. If my internet had gone down or I hadn't clicked quick enough because I sniped it at the end, my collection would be potentially worth $297,000 less, or something like that, right? $300,000 less. Or, I would have put that $3,000 into something else that probably would have 10x'd, so I probably would have made 30,000 instead of 297,000 or whatever on it. So that's the type of stuff that's just insane. And anyone who's been in Pokemon long enough is going to have stories like that, like all the big collection guys. Where you just purchase, I don't know if James is here from Z&G right now. I know he'll watch these while he's like doing his cards, or if Lauren is here and Lauren can say, but like, Z made some ungraded purchases like that just ended up being like he sent them off to PSA, and by the time they got back, they were worth like, he turned like a couple $1,000s into 100,000, those types of things. So yeah, there are, and this is why it's sort of like when there are people in the hobby who they've 10x, they've 5x their money, or there are people in the hobby who've doubled their money or tripled their money, giving advice to lots of other people who have doubled their money and tripled their money, because every single person who's been in the hobby has at least doubled and tripled their money. So it's, just be careful, and yeah. Yeah, Lau says you literally 100x. Yeah, on that I 100x'd. I've also 100x'd on a lot of level X's. Those were sort of because I bought them in large lots, ungraded, and graded some of them myself, and they've just gone up a lot. It's part of why I sold that level X at $400 that went up to like $1,500, because I, but that happens, to me it was a good sale at 400, and, I still have 3 of them. 3 PSA 10s of that one, so I can now, sell them at 1,500. I'm so glad it went up, So all of everything I do is very tactical, and it's also very emotionally tactical. So, for example, I sold at 400 knowing that even if it went up to 1,500, I wouldn't feel that bad because I have 3 more that I can now sell at 1,500. And that isn't rational in terms of making the most money, but it's rational in terms of understanding that I'm a human who gets emotional, and I want to feel good while I'm trading and while I'm trying to make money. So the way that you trade and invest and buy and sell, you don't want to panic yourself. You don't want to make yourself anxious. You don't want to make yourself feel bad, because if you put yourself into an emotionally negative headspace, you're going to make worse deals. You're not going to function as well, which is really important. It's a very underdeveloped thing. Lau says, which level X? So I sold, it was the Dialga G or something, in a PSA 10. Lau says, I want to buy. Yeah, I might sell some of those level X's eventually. I don't know. I'm kind of waiting on them a little, because I'm waiting to see if more get graded and what those pop reports look like. Because if the pop reports really don't fill out, I'm not sure how much of a rush I'm going to be in selling these. I actually think there's a whole generation of collectors who's obsessed with level X's, and and level X's were their favorite cards, and they're just starting to make money. And I think in 10 years, they might have a lot more money. And if there isn't much more level X's, I could see the level X's being really good long-term investments. So I'm kind of in the middle on them right now. There are a lot of cards where I'm paying very close attention to, and I might start to liquidate some of my position in them. That sort of thing. Also, I love level X's. So as a collector, I just love having triples, and I put them on my mantle and I look at them all day. So I'm getting a ton of enjoyment from just having them. So what are all you guys looking for these days? I want to start asking chat questions too and try to have some conversations. People are sharing some of their biggest buys. Spencer says he had a big score. He bought 20 Shadowless First Edition packs for $35 a piece in 2010. That is a huge score. That's awesome. Basic Trainer says that Gem Mint. Love Gem Mint. Actually influenced Zach. He's just such a great guy. Influenced my very first buys in the hobby. When I jumped back in, I bought a base set box for $800 and a jungle and fossil box for $300 each. Those are amazing buys. I know I have a bit of a meme on the channel where, like, one thing I do is I say, whenever someone asks me about a card, I say, well, I was buying those for like under $20 a couple of years ago. It's hilarious. It's just the reality. You know, I say those things also to try to help ground people and understand and realize the price history. Royalty Gaming says, been looking more into DBS cards. Interesting movement on the boxes that are only a couple years old. Yeah, DBS is fun. I'm not investing in any DBS, but I collect a little bit of it for fun. So I watch it a little. My focus is on the older stuff there. John Banker said, I'd like to collect base, my all-time favorite set. Just don't know when is a good time to buy the light played. Oh, with Logan Paul. Sorry, I saw LP and I thought light played. I think you're saying with Logan Paul. Yeah, I don't know either. I think that if you're trying to buy around the time of Logan Paul, it's very easy to get burned and it's very easy to triple your money. You know, when big influencers come in, so you could kind of if you're anxious about losing money, or or it going down, and that's going to really create a bad time. Waiting and being patient is always reasonable. These cards are always going to be available, I think, or at least for the next 5-10 years are going to be available. When I say light played condition ones, if you're looking for mint and gem mint ones, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think 8s are always going to, it might be easy, but I think 9s, I don't know, it might slow down. I'm not sure. Honestly, the fact that modern Pokemon has been doing so well makes me more confident in the vintage. And it's the type of lessons I always teach you guys. Like when other things get really hyped up and do really well that don't have as good of fundamentals as the thing you're holding, that should make you feel more confident about the thing you're holding, not less confident. Because eventually that group who has a ton of money is going to see the fundamentals where you are, and or that's going to retrace, but yours is not, and or there's just a lot more money in the hobby, and most of the money eventually will trickle to the stuff with the best fundamentals. Spencer Card Collector says, good night, everyone. Headed to dinner. Good night, Spencer. Thank you for joining today. Appreciate all of the great comments and just engaging in the chat. Thank you all for you guys for who just like engage in the chat and hang out. It's super fun. Pokemon Classic says, I got an entire Legendary Reverse Holo set near mint for free once. Part of a large collection I purchased. A week later, the seller sent a second box of other stuff he found. Very nice. That's awesome, yeah. It's so cool. Like, I've had those experiences too. I love buying from the same person and developing those relationships. And they'll often, when they find new things or something cool, they'll contact you first. And often it can be such a great win-win in those situations because they know you're trustworthy, they know who you are, and they know that you pay reasonable, fair prices, but you can also get a reasonable, fair price for you. Max says he's given up his sauce. He's been thank you for sharing, Max. He's complete Nintendo e-reader sets and the EX sets. Yeah, DP holo rares. Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. And Digimon. I have not looked at the Digimon yet. I watched Digimon a little as a kid, and I should probably look at the cards to see if they're fun and I like them. Just for my own collecting fun. Joe says he's been collecting some ultra rares. Don't collect those, Joe. Leave them all for me. I'm trying to make a big deal right now. I'm trying to complete a big deal to help me finish. So I have a crazy goal in Score DBZ, which is to I want one of every card in limited, unlimited, and GKI for those who know what GKI is, and yeah, and the promos and everything, and because that's exactly what I did in Pokemon, and I'm crazy, and I set these huge goals, and unfortunately, the market's so hot, and all the markets are so hot that it's going to be much harder for me to do that. I was able to do a lot of that in Pokemon. Crown says, Jake, what is your opinion on collecting a full set of chase card versus prioritizing doubles, triples, or other multiples of the same card? Is it simply collector preference? Yeah, so great question. Lot to be said about that sort of idea. There are people who say whether you're a collector or investor, buy the most expensive card first. I don't agree with that camp. I think that there are times when the most expensive card is way overpriced, and you're going to lose a lot of money doing that. And actually, the less expensive cards are actually where most of the value is going to be gained and where most of the movement's going to happen. And that's because often things have, there are only so many people that can afford a very expensive card. So there's going to be only so many buyers for that card, whereas the less expensive cards, there might be many buyers for. Also, I think that there are a number of people who, when they come into a hobby, they don't know enough about it, so they only buy the most expensive chase cards, and they don't see the value that other collectors see in the less expensive cards from those sets. But we have to be very careful. When I say that, I think people can hear a lot of different things, and what I'm really thinking about in my head is I'm thinking about, the Lugia versus the Slowking in Neo Genesis, something like that, where the Slowking is a phenomenally gorgeous art. The Lugia is selling for $129,000, and there are quite a bit more of the PSA 10 Lugias, and the Lugia has come down quite a bit from that, but, did sell for that. And the Slowking at the time, might have only been selling for what, I don't know, 10,000 if one came out, 5 to 10,000. Doesn't seem right. And if you particularly look at the nines, the 9 Slowking selling for a few hundred. It's just one example, but where there are great cards that are selling for so much less than that Charizard, than that Lugia in that example. The Gold Star Rayquaza versus some of the other Gold Stars, another example. But in terms of your, if we're looking at collecting, so one thing is going to be your collecting goals. Do you like owning doubles? Are you buying doubles to sell them, to flip them, to build extra capital that you can buy one of each? I do some of that. Are you buying doubles for your permanent collection because you like them? I also buy that. I like having doubles of things as a collector too. I enjoy it. I think that the most tricky thing to think about is buyouts and how to, when you buy a bunch of a card, I own 10% of certain cards. PSA 10 vintage cards, for example. I own 10% of the population or 20% of the population of a couple of cards, for example. I didn't go in and buy out all of the cards that were on the market at that one time to build that position, because what happens, there's mixed theories on this, but one thing you're doing, at least initially, is you're bidding against yourself. right? So you buy the cheapest one, so now only the next one is there. You buy that one, you've raised the price on yourself. Okay, so although you've made the first one hopefully more valuable, if other people are going to now buy at that new price, which is the positive of a buyout, the danger you're creating is that there is no demand for that card except you. And so you're the only demand. So the only thing that's actually rising the prices is the fact that you want to buy that card a bunch of times. Nobody else wants it, And so that's the danger of some of these like waifu. When someone buys 1,000 of that card, it's like, now it's successful if people then come in and want it and start buying it for that higher price. But if everyone looks around and says that's crazy, why is it going so high? You might be stuck with like 1,000 of a card that everyone thinks is crazy, and then it immediately goes back down to the price that it was before. So that's the stuff you have to think about. Now, the way that I do buyouts, or the way that I built my positions, because I wanted those cards, and also I wanted them for trade bait, potentially, for the lower pop cards that I was never able to get, is I had buy prices. So every time a card sat for a while or was auctioned at a low price, I would buy it and add it. And so that's one way to own a bunch of a card that you really, really like, that helps build a floor to that card in terms of a price floor, but also allows other people to buy and get engaged at higher prices, which will prove that the card is worth more to other people, and thus create organic price growth in the card, where you're not the one actually causing that initial inflation, which may or may not help the card take off. So I hope that makes sense. It's a little complicated of an idea, but it's very crucial and important. And playing that game and having an instinct for that is what's so important. When an amazing new card comes on the market and you have the confidence, like, this card's going to be amazing, I don't need to wait to see if there's demand for it, I'm just going to buy a bunch of it. That's one way to do it. Another way is to wait to see if there's demand, then kind of buy into it slowly. So, Pat says, I've been investing in Level X Charizards. It's the same thoughts as you, Jake. I have 10 now, but still looking for the PSA 10, which is very difficult to grade. Pop 103. Yeah, so I'm not sure how much you've studied the pops, but there are plenty of Level X's that have like Pop 2s, Pop 4s, Pop 6s. The reason the Charizard, of course, has such a high pop is because it was a lot more expensive, and so more people were grading over time, and a lot more are being sent in and expedited. That's a good card to watch also for other Level X's, because if you start to see a lot of those cards graded, likely you're also going to see a lot of the other cards being graded over time, particularly the high grade ones, because there'll still be enough value in those. The main thing about Level X's, so I've been contacted by a couple people who claim that they have like 20, 30, 40, 50 mint Level X's that they sent in this year. So I'm waiting to see those in the pop report. I think likely we're going to see 9s probably. On a lot of those from my own experience in grading. A lot come back 9s. It's very difficult to get 10s, even fresh out of pack, let alone cards that have been sitting for years. But you have to remember, these were cards that were sitting on Walmart. These are mass-produced items. Just because it says PSA 2 or Pop 2 in the PSA 10 pop report, like, that card was opened massively in packs, from Walmart. So just be careful. And be careful, Pat. People could definitely get badly burned, at least in the short term, on those Level X's, once a lot more population comes in, if there isn't the demand for them. But I do think that I like them long term, and I definitely like them better than anything that came after it. With the exception, I like similarly the Plasma Secret Rare shiny cards, because they're freaking gorgeous and amazing in my opinion. And I really love and they're very difficult to grade too, like from the plasma sets in particular. And I even like some of the later secret rares, as well. And I was buying up a lot of those, like the Dust Noir and Empoleon is a gorgeous one. A lot of cool cards from those sets that are still vastly, vastly underrated when you compare them to the prices that those like rainbow rares are going for. And then even more so when you compare it to the prices of like regular holos from like X and Y cards. Yeah. Pat says, thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. Just, it's tough. I also have the luxury, and this is something I say to everyone, Pat, like I have such a luxury of owning the cards already that I don't have to deal with the fear of missing out that a lot of other people have to deal with. And that's a very real thing. And so it's like, for someone like you, Pat, who like wants to build a collection and love the hobby and enjoy the hobby, if I were in your position, I would be more willing to lose money than I am in my position, because I already have so many of the cards I want. And so I think that, and it's something I repeat to people a lot, because I think it's really important to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand that if you love these cards, generally, I think even if there's quite a bit of risk of them going down, as long as you're not buying on credit, just be aware that these cards can go down, but hopefully they will come back up in the future. And what I would say is buy slowly, and hedge your risk a little bit, but also buy some. Because if it doubles again, you could miss out on cards that you love, and that would really stink. And I would hate for you to misunderstand me, and hear that I think that you shouldn't buy overpriced cards. There are times in life where you should absolutely buy cards, even if you think they're potentially overpriced, because you really love them, because you really like them. And if they do happen to get pushed up by hype or by a YouTuber, it might be a long time till you can own it for cheaper. So, you just have to, it's tough. You have to, I think it's just understanding that. It's the people that I worry about are the people who don't see that risk at all, and they think that they're going to retire on that item, and really, and people who are buying on credit, right? Because really what you're doing is in a lot of cases, you think you're buying an asset, but you're actually buying liability. And that sucks. I guess in that case, not so much liability, because you can't lose more. Although the liability would be on the credit card that you're going into. Yeah. So but and you're also missing out on an opportunity of putting money into stocks or into something that will pay you dividends, that will give you that alternative source of income that even if it does go down, you'll at least get some money out of it over time, and you can sell it and liquidate it if you need right away. Whereas if the market really tanks and a lot of people panic at once, we may have a period where things aren't selling well, where people don't want to buy for a while. And that's something that I think a lot of newer people who are starting businesses in this space, it's my biggest worry for people who are starting businesses right now, is that they're buying a lot of product and they have too much product and they're not selling enough. And they're leveraging themselves too much on credit with product. And if things switch really quickly and people stop buying and become uninterested again, or much less interested, you're going to be faced with a hard choice of, do you liquidate your collection at really stupidly low prices because people are irrationally fearing the market, or do you, find a way to hold for a long time, but then you've just, put a lot of money into items that if you had put them somewhere else, they could have really grown for you and made a more significant positive effect on your life. Let's see. Watsy Fetish says, looks like they're having a good conversation with Julianos. Julianos says, I hear you, Watsy Fetish. I got some Snyder marks for collecting random Watsy PSA 10s, but I love my cards and I believe in them. It's funny how the perception on them has changed. Yeah. I used to get, when I was buying like all of the Topson cards for nothing, like the PSA 10 ones and all these sorts of things, and all the level X's in particular for nothing, people were giving me Snyder marks and saying, nobody likes those, there's no market for them. And I was, just like, good. Like that, the fact that people were when people are irrational, that's a time when you can take advantage of that irrationality. That's where value is. Because what happens is, when people are irrationally bearish, when they look at something and they say there's no value there, why would anyone want that? But you understand that there really is a lot of value there, and people are just sort of like talking something down when it's actually better than it seems. I think, to be fair, I think Evolutions potentially could be that, where a lot of us older people got such negative views on it that we didn't understand how new people coming into the hobby, how much they were going to love it and want it. Now, do I think it's been hyped to the moon? Do I think a lot of that hype got people to open that? Do I think a lot of people who are opening that are really just opening it for money? 100%. But I also think there's an undervaluing of the fact that when new people come in, they're going to want to open base set product, and how easy it was to sell that to them as a good booster box and something to open. And I think that that's a great example of of this sort of thing, where it's like you gotta, and I give PokeNav the credit, right? You gotta trust your own evaluations of things and your own feeling, your own, where you see value. And even if people who you think have bigger collections, who have been in it longer, who know more than you, are telling you something that doesn't make sense, listen to yourself. Do not listen to them. That being said, they may know something that you don't know. And that's where you want to close that knowledge gap. So if you and I are having a disagreement, and you're newer in the hobby than I am, and I have more experience, and you should probably want to understand why I believe what I believe, because maybe you're missing something. But if you feel like you understand exactly why I believe what I believe, and you disagree and see it differently, then you should 100% go with your analysis and not with mine. Okay, 100%. So I think that I think I'm going to end it there for today. I think it's a good place to end. I don't see any more questions here. There probably are a few here and there, but I think I am going to end there. And I'm just going to say a big thank you to everyone. Fantastic. Really enjoyed it today. So great to see so many of my friends from the community here. Thank you so much for taking time with me on this Sunday. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I will be back next Sunday. We'll do another live. If you are on Clubhouse, I'm doing something on, I think, Tuesday and Thursday this week, hopefully. Just kind of small things with some other Pokemon people. But I will never not do YouTube up until, and I think I probably always will do YouTube, but I will never not do YouTube if any of my audience can't get on Clubhouse, that sort of thing. So they need to open Clubhouse to everyone. But it's just great. The support, the positivity here, the fact that all the people who kind of gave me a chance and listened to my arguments and took the time to understand where I was coming from, really appreciate all of you. And I just look forward to doing this more and more and keeping it going. And I will also try and do a couple of videos, maybe at least one this week, maybe two. We'll see. I have a couple of videos I've been wanting to make, but just haven't quite gotten the cards together. I also, at the end of the month, am going to pick up some of my collection, and we'll do some more collection videos at that point. All right. So, everyone take care.